The year is unrecorded in the great annals of the capital, lost somewhere in the quiet drift of centuries between the rise of stone empires and the settling of the deep dust. It is a time of winter, a season that has claimed the northern provinces with a grip of iron and velvet. Here, on the edge of the known world, the calendar holds no sway. There is only the rise and fall of the gray sun, and the endless, hypnotic descent of the snow. It is a landscape painted in 1,000 shades of white and slate, a world where sound is dampened by the heavy, wet blanket that covers the hills, the valleys, and the stone walls of the garrison. The fort stands as a geometric island in this sea of white. It is a square of order imposed upon the wild, rolling moorland. Its walls are thick, built from gray stones hewn from the earth by hands long since at rest. Between the stones, the mortar is frozen solid, a spiderweb of pale lines holding the fortress together against the biting wind. But tonight, the wind has died. The air is still, suspended in a frozen silence that feels ancient and absolute. There is no rustle of pine branches, for they are weighed down too heavily by the snow to move. There is no cry of the hawk, for the birds are tucked away in the deep hollows of old trees. There is only the silence. Inside the barracks of the third cohort, the air is thick and warm. It is a warmth born of living bodies and glowing embers, a sharp contrast to the biting frost that clings to the other side of the heavy oak door. The room is long and low, the ceiling beams lost in shadows that flicker gently with the last, dying light of the brazier. 80 men sleep here. Their breathing creates a collective rhythm, a slow, oceanic tide of inhalation and exhalation that fills the space with a sense of profound peace. It is a sound of safety. It is the sound of a winter hibernation. In the center of the room, the large iron brazier holds the memory of a fire. The flames have long since settled into a bed of deep, pulsing orange coals, coated in a fine layer of gray ash. Occasionally, a coal shifts, settling deeper into the heat with a soft, crystalline clink that barely registers above the sound of sleeping men. The heat radiates outward, softening the smell of the room. It smells of treated leather, of old wood smoke that has soaked into the beams, of dried lavender hung from the rafters to ward off moths, and heavily, pervasively, of wool. Raw, thick, lanolin-rich wool. In the third bunk from the far wall, a soldier named Elias lies awake. He is not restless. His stillness is total, mirroring the night outside. He lies on his back, his eyes tracing the familiar grain of the wooden bunk above him, visible only in the faint amber glow of the coals. He is warm. The wool blanket pulled up to his chin is heavy, a dense weave of gray yarn that traps his body heat, creating a cocoon of comfort. He can feel the roughness of the fabric against his fingertips, a texture that speaks of sheep on high hills and the loom's repetitive clatter. Tonight is a night for the visit. It is not a mission of war, nor a patrol of duty. It is a journey of domestic quietude, a sanctioned absence known only to the decurion who nodded slowly earlier that day. The civilian settlement, the Vicus, lies just beyond the fortress walls, a cluster of timber and wattle houses huddled together against the cold. There, a hearth waits. There, a wife waits. But the journey between this bunk and that hearth is a ritual of slow, deliberate movement. Elias blinks, his eyelashes brushing against his cheek. He exhales a long, silent breath. He prepares to move. In this room of sleepers, speed is the enemy. Sudden movement is a disruption. He must become like smoke, fluid and silent. Slowly, incredibly slowly, he pushes the heavy wool blanket down. The air of the room meets his skin, cooler than the bed but still tempered by the residual heat of the barracks. He sits up, the straw mattress beneath him rustling with a sound like dry autumn leaves, whispered and faint. He pauses. He waits for the sound to die away, ensuring the rhythm of the breathing around him remains unbroken. To his left, a comrade mutters something in a dream, a soft, unintelligible syllable, before sinking back into the depths of sleep. Elias swings his legs over the side of the bunk. His feet find the wooden floorboards. The wood is smooth, polished by generations of sandals and cool to the touch. He wiggles his toes, grounding himself. Beside his bunk sits his wooden chest, a sturdy box of oak bound with iron straps. It contains his life's inventory. He leans down, his movements languid and precise, and unlatches the lid. The latch is well oiled. It opens without a squeak, moving with the viscosity of honey. Inside, his winter gear is folded with military precision. He reaches in, his hand brushing against the cold iron of a spare buckle before finding the soft pile of his tunic. It is a winter tunic, distinct from the linen of summer. This one is wool, dyed a deep, earthy red that has faded to the color of dried clay. He lifts it out, the fabric unfolding with a soft, heavy drape. He stands, his silhouette a long shadow against the dim light. He pulls the tunic over his head. The wool settles onto his shoulders, weighty and reassuring. It falls to his knees, trapping the warmth around his torso. He smooths the fabric down, feeling the coarse weave against his palms. Next comes the belt. It is a wide strip of leather, darkened by years of care. He wraps it around his waist. He does not pull it tight as he would for a march. He leaves it comfortably loose, fastening the brass buckle with a soft click of metal on metal. He sits again to attend to his feet. This is the most crucial part of the preparation. The snow outside is deep, and the cold is a seeking thing, always looking for a way in. He takes a pair of thick socks knitted by the very person he is going to see. The yarn is undyed, the natural creamy white of the sheep. He pulls the left one on, stretching the fabric over his heel, pulling it up his calf. It is soft, scratching gently in a way that stimulates the blood. Then the right sock. He takes a moment to adjust them, ensuring there are no wrinkles that might chafe. Then the boots. He does not wear the hobnailed caligy of the march tonight. The iron studs would ring too loudly on the stone paths, and the open design lets in the snow. Instead, he reaches for his winter boots. These are fully enclosed, made of soft, supple leather that has been waterproofed with tallow and beeswax. They smell of the apiary and the tanner. He slides his left foot in. The fit is snug, cushioned by the thick socks. He begins to lace them. The laces are leather thongs, long and durable. He threads the lace through the bottom eyelet, pulling it taut. He works his way up the ankle, crossing the laces over one another. Over, under, pull, over, under, pull. The motion is repetitive, meditative. He focuses entirely on the tension of the leather, not too tight to allow circulation, not too loose to prevent snow from entering. He ties the knot at the top, tucking the ends into the cuff of the boot. He repeats the process with the right boot. The silence of the room stretches on, measured only by the slow, deliberate lacing of his footwear. Now the outer layer. He reaches back into the chest and retrieves his sagum, the heavy rectangular cloak of the legionary. This is the heaviest item of all. It is a blanket as much as a garment, thick enough to turn rain, dense enough to block the wind. He swings it around his shoulders. The weight of it is immediate, pressing him down, grounding him. He gathers the folds at his right shoulder. He takes a fibula, a large brooch of twisted bronze, and pins the layers together. The pin slides through the thick wool with resistance, then locks into place. He adjusts the hood, letting it hang loose on his back for now. Elias stands fully dressed. He is a shape of wool and leather, insulated against the world. He looks around the room one last time. The brazier's glow has dimmed slightly, the coals turning a deeper shade of red. The breathing of the 80 men continues, a soft human chorus. He feels a sense of kinship with them, but also a sense of separation. They are bound for the world of dreams. He is bound for the world of snow. He walks towards the door. He steps carefully, placing his feet on the sections of the floorboards that he knows are solid, avoiding the ones that creak. It is a dance he has practiced 100 times. He reaches the heavy oak door. The iron handle is cold even in the warmth of the room. He grips it, turns it slowly. The mechanism engages. He pulls. The door opens, revealing a vertical slice of the night. The cold hits him instantly. It is not a violent cold, but a solid presence. It is crisp, clean, and sharp. It smells of absolutely nothing but ice and pure air. It cleanses his lungs as he takes his first breath of the outside. He steps over the threshold, turning to close the door behind him. He pushes it shut, easing it into the frame until the latch clicks. The sound of the sleeping men is cut off, replaced by the immense, ringing silence of the winter courtyard. He stands on the covered walkway that runs the length of the barracks. The roof above him protects the wooden planks from the snow, but just a few feet away, the white drifts begin. The snow has piled up against the wooden columns, curving in soft, organic shapes that look like sleeping animals. Elias pulls his hood up. The wool covers his head, muffling the world, creating a tunnel of vision focused forward. He rubs his gloved hands together. He is wearing simple woolen mittens now, tucked into his belt earlier. He puts them on, flexing his fingers. He steps off the walkway and onto the main thoroughfare of the fort. Here the snow has been packed down by the day's traffic, forming a hard, white road. It crunches under his soft leather boots. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The sound is incredibly loud to his own ears, but in the vastness of the snowy night, it travels nowhere. The snow absorbs it instantly. The fort is asleep. The geometric lines of the buildings are softened by the snowcaps on the roofs. Every sharp angle has been rounded. The granaries, the headquarters, the workshops, they are all silent dark shapes against the slightly lighter gray of the sky. There is no moon visible, hidden behind the endless cloud layer, but the snow itself seems to possess a faint luminescence, reflecting the starlight that must exist somewhere far above the clouds. It creates a twilight visibility, enough to see the path, enough to see the breath clouding in front of his face. He walks down the Via Principalis, the main street of the camp. To his right, a torch flickers in a sconce on the wall of the commander's house. The flame is low, struggling against the cold air, casting dancing shadows that stretch and contract on the snow. Elias watches the flame as he passes. It is the only thing moving in the entire world, save for himself. He approaches the gate. The massive double gates of the fortress are barred for the night, heavy timbers locked with iron beams. But the postern gate, the small pedestrian door set within the larger structure, is guarded. A single sentry stands there, leaning against the stonework, wrapped in a cloak identical to Elias'. The sentry does not challenge him. The rotation is known. The routine is established. In this deep winter, the rigid formalities of the parade ground soften into a mutual understanding of survival and comfort. Elias slows his pace as he nears the gate. The sentry turns his head. The movement is stiff. His neck is buried in layers of wool. "Cold night," Elias whispers. The words form a visible cloud that drifts between them. "The coldest," the sentry replies, his voice a low rumble, barely more than a vibration in the air. "Going out." "Just to the village, for the warmth." The sentry nods. He reaches out with a gloved hand and lifts the heavy iron bar of the postern door. It slides back with a dull thud. He pushes the door open. The hinges groan, a deep, resonant sound of cold metal. "Mind the ice on the bridge," the sentry murmurs. "I will stay warm." "And you?" Elias steps through the small gate. He passes through the thickness of the defensive wall, a tunnel of stone that feels colder than the open air. And then he is out. He stands on the edge of the berm, the defensive ditch falling away before him, filled with snow. Beyond lies the bridge, and beyond that the undefined whiteness of the open world. The fort is behind him now, a shell of stone and order. Ahead lies the vicus, the scattering of homes where the fires are smaller but personal. He takes a step onto the bridge. The wood is slick, coated in a layer of frost that sparkles like diamond dust in the gloom. He walks with care, placing his feet flat to maximize his grip. The river below is frozen at the edges, a black ribbon of water flowing silently in the center, struggling against the encroaching ice. He reaches the other side. The road to the settlement is a faint depression in the snow, marked only by the tracks of a cart that must have passed hours ago, the ruts already filling with fresh powder. He turns his collar up higher. The wind is slightly stronger here, away from the shelter of the walls. It brushes against his cheeks, stinging and fresh. He begins the walk. It is not far, perhaps a mile, but in this snow, every step is a deliberate action. He finds a rhythm. Step, breathe, step, breathe. The monotony is soothing. The world is reduced to the sound of his boots, the white path, and the anticipation of the fire that awaits him. He is a solitary figure in a vast, sleeping landscape, a small point of warmth moving through the beautiful, indifferent winter. The bridge falls behind him, receding into the monolithic gray of the fortress walls, until it is nothing more than a faint, dark horizontal line bisecting the vertical pale of the snow and the sky. Elias turns his face fully toward the open country. The road ahead is not so much a road as it is a suggestion of direction, a linear depression in the landscape where the snow lies slightly flatter, slightly more compacted by the phantom passage of carts that traveled hours, perhaps days, before this current silence settled. He adjusts the weight of the sagum on his shoulders. The heavy wool has settled, the fibers interlocking under the influence of gravity and the damp air, forming a shell that feels less like clothing and more like a portable architectural structure. He shrugs, a slow, rolling motion of his trapezius muscles, to redistribute the pressure where the bronze fibula pins the layers together. The metal is cold, a small, dense point of freezing temperature that he can feel even through the tunic, a reminder of the hardness of the world outside his woolen sanctuary. He takes a step. The snow here beyond the immediate traffic of the fort is different. It is powdery, dry, and deep. His boot sinks into it with a sound that is less of a crunch and more of a soft, compression sigh. Whump. It is the sound of air being squeezed out of a million tiny pockets of ice. He lifts his foot and the leather upper of the boot comes away clean, the dry crystals falling off the treated surface like sugar. He places it down again. Whump. The rhythm begins to assert itself. It is a slow cadence, dictated by the resistance of the drifts. There is no marching here, no crisp striking of the heel. There is only the weighting, the lifting of the knee, the extension of the shin, the planting of the sole. It is a hypnotic motion, a cycle of effort and release that warms the large muscles of his thighs. He can feel the heat generating deep within the quadriceps, a furnace stoked by movement, radiating outward to combat the encroaching chill. To his left, the land rises in a gentle, rolling slope that disappears into the low-hanging cloud base. It is a canvas of absolute minimalism. There are no jagged rocks, no chaotic brambles. Everything has been smoothed over, buried under 2 feet of winter. The only variation in the whiteness is the texture. Where the wind has scoured the surface, the snow is rippled like the sand of a seabed, tiny undulations of shadow and light that stretch for acres. Where the wind has been blocked, the snow is smooth, a perfect, unblemished matte surface that seems to absorb his gaze, pulling him into a trance of pure visual silence. He breathes in. The air is sharp, tasting of iron and vast distances. It enters his nose, chilling the nasal passages, cooling the back of his throat, filling his lungs with a density that feels heavier than summer air. He holds it for a moment, letting his body exchange the oxygen, and then exhales. The breath leaves him as a billow of white steam, a thick, turbulent cloud that swirls in front of his eyes for a second before dissipating into the ether. He watches one cloud, then another. They are the only evidence of life in this frozen tableau. They are the ghosts of his own vitality, released into the night. The cold on his face is a physical weight. It presses against his cheeks, his forehead, the bridge of his nose. It is not painful, but it is numbing. It creates a sensation of tightening, as if the skin is being pulled taut over the bone. He buries his chin deeper into the folds of his scarf. The wool there is damp from his breath, warm and wet, smelling of wet sheep and salt. It is a stark contrast to the dry ice of the wind. He rotates his head slightly, feeling the friction of the coarse fabric against his stubble. The sound of the wool rubbing against his jaw is loud in his ears, a rough, scratching whisper that drowns out the silence of the fields. He walks past a solitary tree. It is an oak, ancient and gnarled, standing alone by the side of the road like a sentinel who has forgotten his orders. Its branches are bare, black skeletal fingers reaching up into the void. They are etched against the sky with the precision of ink on parchment. Snow clings to the windward side of the trunk, a vertical stripe of white that highlights the deep fissures in the bark. Elias slows his pace to look at it. He observes the way the snow has piled in the crooks of the branches, forming little white cushions. He notices a single, withered leaf still clinging to a lower twig, trembling ever so slightly in a draft of air that he cannot feel. It is a study in endurance. The tree does not fight the winter. It simply exists within it, waiting, holding its sap deep in the roots, far below the frost line. He moves on. The tree recedes, joining the bridge in the library of things behind him. The road begins to curve, following the contour of a frozen stream. The water is hidden beneath a thick slab of ice, opaque and milky white. Along the banks, tall reeds stand in clumps. They are brown and brittle, dead stalks that rustle with a sound like dry paper when the wind sighs. The snow around them is punctured by their stems, creating tiny, dark circles where the heat of the decomposing plant matter has melted the ice just enough to create a gap. Elias watches the reeds. They are the only things that move. They sway with a lethargic, jerking motion, bowing to the invisible currents of the air. He focuses on his feet again. The leather of his boots is holding up well. He can feel the coolness of the snow pressing against the toes, but the tallow grease he applied yesterday is doing its work. The moisture is kept at bay. Inside, his toes are curled in the thick yarn of the socks, moving rhythmically to maintain circulation. He wiggles them, big toe, second toe, third. A small, private inventory of parts. He feels the arch of his foot stretch and contract. The mechanics of walking are usually unconscious, but tonight, in this slowness, they are fascinating. He is a machine of bone and sinew, propelling himself through a hostile environment with the efficiency of thousands of years of engineering. The silence is profound. It is not merely the absence of noise, it is a heavy, dampening presence. The snow absorbs sound waves, swallowing them whole. There is no echo. If he were to shout, the sound would fall dead from his lips, smothered by the drifts, but he has no desire to shout. The quiet is a blanket, it wraps around his mind, slowing his thoughts. The worries of the garrison, the roster, the rations, the endless maintenance of armor fade away. There is only the step, the breath, the cold, the white. He passes a milestone, a pillar of gray stone set into the earth. It is capped with a mushroom of snow. The carved Roman numerals are filled with ice, rendering them illegible, smoothed into the surface of the rock. He reaches out a gloved hand as he passes, his fingers brushing the rough granite. It is a momentary connection with the permanence of the empire, a touch of something solid in a world of soft, shifting powder. The stone is impossibly cold, colder even than the air, a sink that draws the heat from his glove instantly. He withdraws his hand, flexing his fingers to bring the blood back. Ahead, the darkness is changing. The uniform gray of the horizon is broken by shapes, rectangles, triangles, the sharp, pitched lines of roofs, the vicus. It is not a city, nor even a town. It is a huddle of humanity clinging to the skirts of the fort. The houses are low, built of timber and wattle and daub, their walls thick and plastered with mud and lime to seal out the drafts. Tonight they are dark shapes against the snow. There are no lights in the windows. The oil is too precious to burn for no reason, and the shutters are closed tight. But there is a sign of life. A smoke. It rises from the central smoke holes and the clay chimneys of a dozen cottages. It ascends in straight, unwavering pillars of gray, darker than the sky, reaching up until it hits the air currents high above and disperses. The smell reaches Elias before he sees the details of the houses. It is the scent of civilization. It is the smell of oak logs burning slowly. It is the smell of peat, rich and earthy. It is the smell of pine resin, sharp and sweet. It cuts through the sterile, metallic scent of the snow, triggering a primal response in his brain. Fire, shelter, safety. He walks towards the smell. The snow on the road becomes more disturbed here. There are tracks of dogs, the hoofprints of a goat, the chaotic trampling of children's feet, now frozen into a chaotic topographical map of daily life. Elias navigates the ruts carefully. The footing is treacherous here, the snow packed into slick, icy patches where puddles formed during the day and froze at sunset. He shortens his stride, keeping his center of gravity low. He reaches the first fence. It is a crude affair of woven willow branches, brittle and brown. Snow sits on top of the weave like icing on a cake. He runs his gloved hand along the top rail, knocking a fine dusting of powder loose. It falls silently. Beyond the fence, a garden lies dormant. Cabbage stalks, black and withered, poke through the snow like the stumps of a burnt forest. A mound of earth suggests a root cellar, buried deep and covered with straw. He enters the main lane of the village. The houses loom on either side, pressing in, creating a canyon of shadows. The wind is blocked here and the air feels stiller, slightly warmer, infused with the heat escaping from the thin walls. He can hear the faint sounds of the interiors now. As he passes one house, he hears the low, rhythmic thrumming of a snore. It is a deeply human sound, absurd and comforting in the vastness of the winter night. He smiles, a tiny movement of his lips hidden by the scarf. He passes another house. From within, the muffled sound of a baby crying, a thin, reedy wail that is quickly hushed, followed by the soft murmur of a mother's voice. The sounds are intimate, leaking through the cracks in the daub, snippets of lives being lived in the cocoon of the winter. Elias feels like a ghost passing through a graveyard of the living, an observer who belongs to the outside, to the cold. He walks on. His destination is near the end of the lane where the village trails off back into the wild scrub. The snow is deeper here again, the path less traveled. He counts the houses. 1, 2, 3. The fourth house is small. It sits slightly back from the lane behind a low stone wall. A large stack of firewood is piled against the side of the house, the logs cut and split, their ends showing the concentric rings of their years, yellow and brown wood protected by a tarp of oiled leather. The roof is thatched with heavy reeds, the snow lying thick and heavy upon it, overhanging the eaves like a heavy brow. Elias stops at the gate. It is a simple wooden hurdle. He lifts the loop of rope that holds it shut. The rope is stiff with frost, crinkling as he bends it. He pushes the gate open. It swings silently on leather hinges that have been well greased. He steps into the small yard. The path to the door has been swept. Someone has taken a broom of birch twigs and cleared the snow away, leaving a clean, dark path of frozen earth. The care in this action strikes him. It is a welcome. It is a preparation. He walks down the swept path, his boots making a duller thud on the hard earth. He reaches the door. It is made of thick planks of oak, darkened by age and smoke. The grain of the wood is deep and weathered, full of ridges and valleys that catch the faint light. There is no handle, only a leather thong hanging from a small hole. Elias stands there for a moment. He does not knock. To knock would be to startle, to demand. Instead, he stands in the small shelter of the eaves, out of the direct fall of the snow. Though it has stopped snowing, the air still feels full of it. He listens. Inside, he hears the crackle of a fire. It is a distinct sound, the popping of a resin pocket, the shifting of a log. He hears the soft scrape of a pot being moved on a hearthstone. He hears the padding of feet, soft shoes on a hard dirt floor. He begins to unfasten his cloak. His fingers, slightly stiff despite the mittens, fumble gently with the bronze fibula. He works the pin loose, sliding it back through the heavy wool. He holds the brooch in his hand, feeling its cold bite. He lets the hood fall back. The cold air touches his ears, his neck, his hair. It is a shock, but a pleasant one. He shakes his head slightly, dislodging a few flakes of snow that had caught on the wool. He unwraps the scarf from his face. He folds it carefully, draping it over his arm. He takes a deep breath, smelling the wood smoke that is now thick and immediate, seeping through the door jambs. It smells of home. He reaches out and pulls the leather thong. Inside, a latch lifts. He pushes the door. It opens inward with a soft, heavy sigh of timber. The light spills out. It is not the blinding light of the sun, but the rich, golden, liquid light of a hearth fire. It floods the snowy doorstep, turning the white crystals into scattered gold dust. It hits Elias' face, warm and sudden. He steps over the threshold. The transition is absolute. One moment he is in the world of the blue and the gray, the world of the freeze, the world of the infinite sky. The next, he is inside. He closes the door behind him, pressing it firmly until the latch falls back into place. He leans his back against the wood for a heartbeat, sealing the cold out. The room is small, low-ceilinged, and intensely warm. The air is thick with heat, stratified in layers, hottest near the ceiling where bundles of drying herbs hang, sage, thyme, rosemary, releasing their oils into the atmosphere. The walls are washed in a pale lime, glowing orange in the firelight. In the center of the room is the hearth. It is the heart of the world. A fire burns there, not a roaring blaze, but a mature, steady fire of large logs that have been burning for hours. The bed of coals is deep and glowing, a pulsing mound of heat. Above the fire, a black iron pot hangs from a chain, bubbling softly. Blup, blup. A wisp of steam escapes the lid, curling lazily into the chimney. And there, standing by the hearth, turning from the table, is the woman. She is wearing a simple tunic of undyed wool, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. Her hair is braided and pinned up, though a few strands have escaped to frame her face in the firelight. She holds a wooden spoon in one hand. She does not speak. She does not rush. In this world of slowness, their greeting is a quiet thing. She looks at him, her eyes reflecting the flames. A smile, small and genuine, touches her lips. It is a smile of recognition, of waiting rewarded. Elias exhales, the last of the winter air leaving his lungs. He begins to unbuckle his belt. The metal chinks softly. The sound is the only punctuation in the quiet room. He is here. The walk is done. The visit has begun. The door is shut. The world of the wind and the ice has been severed from this room by 2 inches of seasoned oak planks. Elias leans back against the wood, feeling the solid, unyielding surface against his spine. He closes his eyes for a moment, letting the sensory shift wash over him. The silence here is different from the silence outside. Outside, it was a vast, empty absence of sound, a vacuum waiting to be filled. Inside, the silence is a living thing, composed of 100 tiny, rhythmic noises that weave together into a tapestry of peace. There is the hiss of a green log releasing its moisture into the flames. There is the tick-tick-tick of the cooling metal on his belt buckle as it adjusts to the room's temperature. There is the soft, barely audible shuffle of wool against wool as Elias moves near the hearth. And beneath it all, the deep, resonant draft of the chimney drawing the smoke upward, a low-frequency hum that vibrates in the chest more than it is heard by the ear. Elias opens his eyes. The room is bathed in the orange and yellow geometry of the firelight. Shadows stretch and contract on the plastered walls, dancing a slow, fluid waltz. The light catches the dust motes floating in the air, turning them into suspended sparks of gold that drift lazily in the convection currents. He begins the process of shedding the winter. First, the sagum. The heavy rectangular cloak is burdened with the memory of the snow. The wool is damp on the surface, the lanolin having turned the water into tiny beads that cling to the coarse fibers. He reaches up with his gloved hands, his movements stiff but deliberate, and finds the heavy bronze fibula at his shoulder. The metal is cold, a stark contrast to the rapidly warming air of the room. He pushes the pin. It slides through the thick layers of folded wool with a dry, scratching sound, scritch, and pops free. He holds the brooch in his palm for a second, feeling its weight, before placing it on a small shelf by the door. Clink. The sound is sharp, a punctuation mark ending his journey. He unrolls the cloak from his shoulders. As the weight lifts, he feels a physical decompression of his spine. The heavy fabric falls away, revealing the tunic underneath. He gathers the cloak in his arms. It smells of the outside, of ozone, of cold stone, of wet earth. He folds it once, twice, managing the bulk of it. There is a wooden peg driven into the wall near the door, specifically for this purpose. He hangs the cloak there. It settles with a heavy flump, the folds arranging themselves into vertical columns of shadow. It will hang there for hours, slowly drying, releasing a faint scent of damp wool that will mingle with the wood smoke. Next, the gloves. He pulls them off one by one. The wool catches slightly on his rough skin. As his hands emerge, they are pale and stiff. He flexes his fingers, open, close, open, close. The blood begins to return to the capillaries, bringing with it a prickly sensation, a pins and needles feeling that is both uncomfortable and reassuring. He rubs his hands together, the friction creating a dry, rasping sound. Elias has not spoken yet. She knows the ritual. She knows that the transition from the guard post to the hearth requires a decompression of the spirit as much as the body. She moves to the table, a rough-hewn slab of elm wood that dominates the center of the room. She places a ceramic bowl on the surface. The sound of the pottery meeting the wood is a dull thud. Elias walks to the stool near the fire. It is a three-legged stool built low to the ground to catch the heat. The seat is polished smooth by years of use, the wood grain worn into a topography of comfort. He sits. The joints of his knees pop softly. He extends his legs toward the fire, not too close, just enough to let the radiant heat begin to work on the leather of his boots. The boots. The laces are stiff with cold, the leather knots tight and unyielding. He leans forward, his breath hitching slightly as he bends at the waist. He works his fingernail under the knot of the left boot. It resists. He pulls gently, teasing the leather thong loose. It gives way with a small creak. He unwinds the laces from around his ankle. The leather strips leave indentations in the wool of his socks, pale lines that mark where the pressure has been. He loosens the laces all the way down to the bridge of the foot. The boot opens like a shell. He grips the heel and pulls. There is a suction sound, a wet shuck, as his foot slides out. The relief is instantaneous. His foot, encased in the thick, creamy wool of the sock, expands. He wiggles his toes, feeling the fabric move against his skin. He places his stockinged foot on the warm stone of the hearth. The heat travels up through the sole, a delicious, creeping warmth that makes his eyelids heavy. He repeats the process with the right boot. Pick at the knot, unwind the lace, loosen the tongue, pull the heel, shuck. He sets the boots aside, placing them near the wall where the gentle heat will dry them without cracking the leather. They stand there, empty and slouched, like two exhausted sentinels relieved of their watch. Now he is truly inside. He is no longer a soldier of the cohort. He is a man in his home. He leans back on the stool, resting his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped loosely in front of the fire. He stares into the flames. The fire is a masterpiece of stacking. A large log of seasoned oak forms the back, a slow-burning block that reflects the heat forward. Against it, smaller logs of birch and pine are piled. The birch bark curls and blackens, peeling away in paper-thin layers that catch fire and float upward as glowing embers. The pine hisses, pockets of resin boiling and exploding with miniature pops, snap, crackle. The flames are mesmerizing. At the base they are blue, a transparent, ghostly color where the heat is most intense. Higher up, they turn to yellow, then to a deep, rich orange, and finally to red at the tips where they vanish into smoke. Elias watches a single tongue of flame lick around the side of a log. It moves like water, fluid and unpredictable. He tracks its path, his eyes following the motion until his vision blurs slightly. The heat washes over his face, drying the moisture in his eyes, relaxing the muscles of his jaw. He feels his shoulders drop another inch. He hears Ilara's footsteps approaching. They are soft, the sound of leather slippers on packed earth. She stops beside him. He does not look up immediately. He simply looks at the hem of her dress, the way the firelight catches the weave of the fabric. She reaches out and touches his shoulder. Her hand is warm. The heat of her palm seeps through his tunic, a grounding connection. It is a touch that says everything that needs to be said. You are here. You are safe. The cold is gone. The kettle is hot, she says softly. Her voice is low, pitched to match the quiet of the room. It is a texture of sound like the rustle of dry leaves. Thank you, Elias murmurs. His voice is raspy, unused for the last hour. She moves away, back to the table. He hears the sound of water being poured. It is a high-pitched, clear sound, glug, 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 as the liquid leaves the clay pitcher and fills a basin. She is preparing the wash water. Elias stands, his stockinged feet silent on the floor. He walks to the table. The basin is steaming. A small bar of soap made from tallow and wood ash sits beside it. It is rough and gray, smelling faintly of lavender. He dips his hands into the water. It is hot, bordering on scalding, but to his frozen hands it feels divine. The heat penetrates his skin, sinking into the bones of his fingers. He cups the water and splashes it over his face. The shock of the heat creates a sudden intake of breath. He scrubs his face, washing away the invisible film of the winter wind, the dust of the barracks, the fatigue of the walk. He reaches for the soap. He rubs it between his palms, creating a thin, milky lather. He washes his hands slowly, methodically. He cleans under his fingernails, between his fingers up to his wrists. The water turns slightly gray. He rinses, splashing the water again and again, letting it drip from his chin, his nose, his elbows. Elias hands him a cloth. It is a piece of linen, old and soft, worn thin by countless washings. He buries his face in it. It smells of dried herbs and sunshine, a scent locked into the fibers from when it was dried on the bushes in the summer. He rubs his face dry, the friction stimulating his skin, leaving it pink and glowing. He lowers the cloth and looks at Elias. She is watching him, her eyes calm and dark. In the dim light, the lines of her face are smoothed away. She looks timeless, like a carving of a household god. "The snow is deep," she asks. It is a statement more than a question. "Deep," Elias confirms. "And the wind is stopping. It will freeze hard tonight." "The wood is stacked high," she says, glancing at the pile of logs in the corner. "We have enough." "Good." He moves back to the stool, but this time he pulls it to the table. The table is set for two. Two wooden bowls polished dark with oil, 2 spoons, a loaf of bread, round and dense, sitting on a wooden board, a knife with a bone handle. Elias goes to the hearth. She takes a heavy cloth and wraps it around the handle of the iron pot hanging over the fire. She lifts it. The pot is heavy, cast from thick iron. She carries it to the table, her steps measured to avoid spilling. She places it on a trivet made of wrought iron. As she lifts the lid, a cloud of steam billows upward, white and thick. It hits the cooler air of the room and swirls, expanding like a mushroom cloud before dissipating. The smell fills the room instantly. It is a rich, savory smell. It smells of onions that have been cooked down until they are sweet and brown. It smells of carrots and turnips, earthy and solid. It smells of salted pork, the fat rendered into the broth. It is the smell of sustenance. Elias watches as she takes the ladle. It is a large wooden spoon, stained deep brown. She dips it into the pot. The thick liquid swirls. She lifts the ladle full of stew. She pours it into his bowl. The sound is wet and heavy splosh. The stew is thick, chunks of vegetables and meat tumbling into the bowl, the broth glistening with circles of golden fat. She fills her own bowl. She sits opposite him. There is no rush to eat. The food is too hot. Steam rises from the bowls in vertical columns. Elias wraps his hands around the bowl. The wood is warm, transferring the heat of the stew into his palms. He holds it there, using the food as a hand warmer. He looks at the bread. He reaches for the knife. He does not slice the bread, he cuts a wedge, sawing gently through the thick, dark crust. The crust is hard, resisting the blade, but the inside is soft and yielding. He pulls a piece free. The crumb is dense, full of air pockets the color of rye. He breaks a small piece of bread and drops it into his stew. He watches it float for a moment, absorbing the broth, turning dark and heavy, before it sinks slowly beneath the surface. The room is settling into a deep rhythm. The fire pops. The wind outside, now just a whisper, brushes against the thatch of the roof with a sound like a soft broom sweeping. The candle on the table flickers, casting long, wavering shadows of their hands against the walls. Elias picks up his spoon. He stirs the stew gently, cooling it. The wooden spoon scrapes against the wooden bowl, scritch, scrape, a dry, homely sound. He lifts the spoon to his lips. He blows on it, his breath creating ripples in the dark liquid. He takes the first sip. The flavor is intense. Salt, sweet onion, the bitterness of herbs, the richness of the meat. It coats his tongue, warming his throat as it goes down. It lands in his stomach with a feeling of heavy satisfaction. He exhales a long breath through his nose. "Good," he says again. Alara nods. She breaks her bread, dipping it into her bowl. They eat in silence. It is not an awkward silence. It is a companionable silence born of years of shared meals. There is no need to fill the air with words. The act of eating, of sharing warmth, is communication enough. The spoon rises and falls. The bread is broken. The fire crackles. Outside, the temperature drops, the snow hardens into ice, and the stars wheel overhead in the black sky. But here, in this small circle of light, time seems to have stopped. There is only the bowl, the fire, and the warmth. Elias feels the tension of the garrison leaving him completely. The rigid posture of the soldier melts away. His shoulders round forward. His legs relax, his eyelids droop. The hypnotic repetition of eating, lift, blow, sip, swallow, lulls him into a state of near trance. The boredom of the moment is its greatest luxury. There is nothing to guard against. There is no patrol to walk. There is only this. He finishes the bowl. He uses a final piece of bread to wipe the bottom clean, capturing the last of the savory broth. He eats the bread. He sets the spoon down. He looks around the room, his eyes tracing the familiar objects. The bundle of dried sage hanging from the rafter. The clay jar where the flour is kept. The small loom in the corner, covered with a cloth. These are the artifacts of peace. He memorizes them, storing the image away to recall later when he is back in the cold bunk of the barracks. "The river is frozen," Alara asks, her voice breaking the silence gently. "Mostly," Elias answers. "The center still flows, but the edges are thick. The miller said the wheel stopped turning yesterday." "Ice in the gears," Elias nods. "It happens every year." "He will have to wait for the thaw." "We all wait for the thaw," Elias says. He looks at the fire. The large oak log has burned down, splitting in the center to reveal a glowing red heart. The heat is less intense now, a steady, pulsing warmth rather than a sharp radiation. The shadows in the room have deepened as the candle has burned lower. He feels a heavy drowsiness settling over him. It is a pleasant weight pressing him down into the stool. The meal, the warmth, the silence, it is a powerful soporific, but the visit is not over. There is still time. The night is long and the dawn is far away. He watches Alara rise to clear the bowls. Her movements are slow, hypnotic. She stacks the bowls. She wipes the table with a cloth. Every motion is efficient, practiced, rhythmic. Elias watches her hands. They are capable hands, roughened by work but gentle. He stands up, stretching his back. His spine cracks, pop, pop, a release of tension. He walks back to the fire, turning his back to it, letting the heat warm his kidneys. He looks at the bed in the corner of the room. It is a box bed built into the wall, filled with straw ticking and covered with piles of sheepskins and wool blankets. It looks like a cloud anchored to the earth. But not yet. "I brought the needles," he says, reaching into the pouch at his belt. Elias turns, her eyes lighting up. "The bone ones." "Yes, and the new wool from the quartermaster's stock." He pulls out a small bundle of yarn, dyed a deep, imperial blue, and a set of polished bone needles. He places them on the table. It is a small gift, a token of the world inside the fort brought to the world outside. She picks up the wool. She rubs it between her thumb and forefinger. "It is soft," she whispers, "very soft." "For a winter hood," he suggests. "Or warm socks," she smiles. The wind rises slightly outside, a low moan that circles the house, seeking an entry point. It finds none. The mud and straw hold fast. The fire flares briefly as the draft changes, then settles back. The room feels even cozier for the reminder of the storm outside. Elias breathes in the smell of the room, wood smoke, wool, drying herbs, and the faint, sweet scent of the bread. It is the smell of a winter sanctuary. Elias watches Alara take the wool. She moves to the chair by the fire, a high-backed construction of willow and ash wood that creaks softly as she sits. Creak, creak. The sound is domestic, familiar. She places the skein of blue yarn in her lap. It sits there against her gray skirt like a patch of deep winter sky brought indoors. She picks up the bone needles. They are smooth, polished to a dull shine by years of handling, pale and yellowed like old ivory. She tests the points against her thumb. They are sharp enough to catch the wool but dull enough not to pierce the skin. She nods, satisfied. Elias remains standing for a moment longer, soaking in the sight. This is the core of the visit, the simple, shared existence in a warm space while the world freezes outside. He moves to the woodpile. He selects a log, a piece of birch with the bark peeling in paper-thin curls. He weighs it in his hand. It is light, dry, seasoned perfectly. He places it on the fire. The log settles onto the glowing bed of coals with a soft thud. A shower of orange sparks flies up the chimney, vanishing into the soot-darkened throat of the flue. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the birch bark catches. A small blue flame licks along the edge, curling the paper back. It grows, turning yellow, then orange, consuming the wood with a cheerful crackle. The light in the room brightens, pushing the shadows back into the corners. Elias returns to his stool. He pulls it closer to Elias, sitting just to her right, so they form a shallow V-shape facing the hearth. He leans back against the wall, stretching his legs out. His stockinged feet are warm now, the wool socks almost too hot against the stone floor, but he does not move them. The heat feels like a luxury he must hoard. Elias begins to cast on. She pulls a length of yarn from the skein. She makes a slip knot, tightening it around one needle. Then her fingers begin a rhythmic dance. Loop, twist, pull. Loop, twist, pull. The yarn flows over her left index finger, tensioned perfectly. The right needle dives under the loop on the left needle, wraps the yarn, pulls it through, and slides the old loop off. Click, click, click. The sound of the needles touching is soft, a rhythmic percussion that underpins the quiet of the room. It is a steady, soothing beat, faster than a heart, slower than a run. Elias watches her hands. They move with an economy of motion that is mesmerizing. There is no wasted energy. Every twitch of a finger, every turn of the wrist, serves the purpose of creating fabric from string. "It is good wool," she murmurs, her eyes focused on the growing row of stitches. "Strong, tightly spun." "The quartermaster says it comes from the hill flocks," Elias replies, his voice low. "The sheep with the black faces." "They have the warmest fleece," she agrees. "It has the oil in it still." She works in silence for a while. The row of stitches grows longer, hanging from the needle like a blue caterpillar. When she reaches the end of the row, she turns the work. The needle that was full becomes empty. The empty one becomes full. She begins the next row. Click, click, click. Elias feels his eyelids growing heavy again. The rhythm is hypnotic. He finds himself timing his breathing to the click of the needles. Inhale for 4 stitches. Exhale for 4 stitches. The world narrows down to that small point of focus, the interplay of bone and wool in the firelight. He looks around the room again, letting his gaze wander slowly. The shadows have shifted with the new log. They are longer now, stretching up the walls like phantom trees. He looks at the shelves built into the daub walls. They are simple planks of oak, bowed slightly in the middle under the weight of their contents. There is a row of clay jars, sealed with wax and cloth. Inside, he knows, are the summer's harvest preserved: pickled onions, salted beans, dried apples. Next to them are small bundles of tallow candles, tied together with twine. A wooden bowl holds a collection of smooth river stones, gathered for no other reason than their pleasing shape. On a lower shelf, there is a small wooden box with a sliding lid. It contains Elias's treasures: a polished piece of amber washed up on a distant shore, a silver coin from the reign of an emperor 2 dynasties past, a dried flower pressed between 2 pieces of slate. These are the anchors of her life, small, tangible pieces of memory. Elias' gaze moves to the floor. It is packed earth, hard and smooth as stone, swept clean of dust. In the center, near the hearth, a woven rush mat provides a layer of insulation. The rushes are dry and golden, smelling faintly of the marsh in summer. One corner is slightly frayed, the reeds broken by the passage of feet. He makes a mental note to bring fresh rushes when the thaw comes. The fire pops again. A spark lands on the hearthstone, glowing bright red for a second before fading to gray ash. Elias watches it die. It is a tiny, insignificant event, yet in this quiet room it feels momentous. He shifts on the stool. The wood creaks. He settles back, finding a more comfortable position against the wall. He can feel the roughness of the plaster through his tunic, a texture like fine sand. "The wind has changed," Elias says, not looking up from her knitting. Elias listens. The low moan in the chimney has shifted pitch. It is deeper now, more constant. "From the north," he says. "It will bring more snow by morning." "The roof will hold," she says with certainty. "I checked the thatch last week," Elias reminds her. "It is thick." "Good." She reaches the end of another row. She pauses to pull more yarn from the skein. The ball of wool rolls slightly in her lap, a blue sphere rotating on a gray landscape. She adjusts the tension, wrapping the yarn around her pinky finger. She resumes knitting. Click, click, click. Elias closes his eyes. He lets the sounds wash over him. The click of the needles, the snap of the fire, the wind in the chimney, his own breathing. It is a symphony of safety. He feels a profound sense of gratitude. Out there beyond the walls, the Legion is a machine of discipline and iron. Here, there is only soft wool and warm light. He drifts. He is not asleep, but he is floating on the edge of it. His thoughts become loose and disjointed. He thinks of the snow piling up against the door, sealing them in. He thinks of the heat radiating from the stones of the hearth. He thinks of the blue wool becoming a hood, wrapping around a face, protecting it from the wind. Elias asks. The word pulls him back. He opens his eyes. She has stopped knitting, the needles resting in her lap. "Yes," he says, "please." She sets the knitting aside on the small table. She stands up. Her movements are slow, deliberate. She takes the kettle from the trivet. She pours hot water into 2 clay cups. She reaches for a jar on the shelf and takes a pinch of dried leaves, mint, and chamomile. She crumbles them into the cups. The steam rises, carrying the scent of summer herbs into the winter room. She brings the cups to the fire. She hands one to him. "Careful," she whispers, "it is hot." He takes the cup. The clay is rough and warm. He brings it to his nose and inhales. The steam clears his sinuses. It smells of green fields and sunshine, a memory of a different season. He takes a sip. The tea is hot, slightly bitter and clean. It warms his chest as it goes down. "The mint is strong this year," he says. "It dried well," she answers, sitting back down with her cup. "It held the oil." They sit in silence, sipping their tea. The knitting lies on the table, a promise of work to be returned to. The fire burns steadily. The room is a capsule of warmth in a universe of cold. Elias looks at the window. It is covered by a heavy wooden shutter, barred from the inside. There is no glass. He cannot see the snow, but he can feel it pressing against the house. He imagines the flakes falling, millions of them covering the world in a blanket of silence. He imagines the sentries on the walls of the fort, huddled in their cloaks, stamping their feet to keep warm. He feels a pang of sympathy for them, followed by a deeper wave of comfort at his own situation. He finishes his tea. He places the empty cup on the floor beside his stool. "I should check the door," he says half-heartedly. "It is barred," Elias says, "and the snow is piled against it, no one will come. Habit, he smiles. Rest, she says, you have walked far. It was not so far, he lies. The snow was light. The snow is never light, she corrects him gently. But you are here. I am here. She picks up the knitting again. The needles click. The rhythm resumes. Elias leans his head back against the wall. He watches the shadows dance on the ceiling beams. They look like waves on a dark ocean, rolling and breaking in slow motion. He thinks about the morning. He will have to leave before dawn, before the first light touches the sky. He will have to retrace his steps through the snow, back to the fort, back to the barracks, back to the life of iron and orders. But that is hours away. That is a lifetime away. For now there is only the fire, the wool, the tea, and the quiet, endless click of the needles. Click, click, click. The sound becomes a lullaby. His head nods forward. He jerks it back up. Sleep, Elias says softly. I will wake you. Just for a moment, he murmurs. Just for a moment, she agrees. He closes his eyes. The darkness behind his lids is warm and orange-tinted. The sound of the knitting fades into a gentle background noise, like rain on a roof. He feels himself sinking deeper into the warmth, drifting away from the shore of wakefulness, out into the calm, deep sea of sleep. The fire pops one last time, a soft punctuation mark to his consciousness. Then there is only the rhythm. Click, click, click. The silence that follows the cessation of the knitting needles is heavy, a physical weight that settles into the corners of the room like a fine, invisible dust. Elias blinks, the motion slow and deliberate, his eyelashes brushing against his cheeks with a sensation that feels louder than it should. The rhythmic click-click-click of the bone against bone had been a metronome for his drifting consciousness, and its absence pulls him back, gently but firmly, from the precipice of sleep. He lifts his head from where it had rested against the rough plaster of the wall. His neck muscles are loose, warm, and pliable. He rotates his head slowly to the left, then to the right. There is a faint series of pops, like dry twigs snapping under deep snow, the sound of tension leaving the cervical spine. He takes a deep breath. The air in the room has changed subtly. It is still thick with the scent of wood smoke and dried sage, but the sharp, metallic tang of the cold outside has begun to press harder against the door and the shuttered window. The temperature near the floor has dropped perhaps a degree, a reminder that the fire, though faithful, requires attendance. Elias is looking at her work. She holds the square of blue knitting up to the firelight. The weave is tight and even, a grid of interlocking loops that traps the air and holds the heat. She runs her thumb over the rows, checking for dropped stitches or uneven tension. The sound of her skin against the wool is a soft rush, a whisper of friction. She nods, satisfied, and lowers the fabric. The night log, Elias murmurs. His voice is deep, vibrating in his chest. The night log, she agrees. He stands. The movement is hydraulic, a slow unfolding of limbs. He leaves the warmth of the stool and steps toward the woodpile stacked against the far wall. The pile is a library of potential heat. There are split logs of pine which burn fast and hot, round logs of birch with their peeling paper bark, and at the bottom the heavy, dense blocks of seasoned oak. These are the anchors of the hearth. They do not flame so much as glow, releasing their energy in a slow, steady radiation that lasts until dawn. Elias bends down. His knees crack softly. He selects a large section of oak. It is the size of a man's thigh, dark and gnarled, the bark thick and furrowed like the skin of an ancient elephant. He lifts it. It is heavy, denser than water, a solid mass of carbon and stored sunlight from summers long past. He holds it with both hands, feeling the rough texture of the bark biting into his palms. It is cool to the touch, having sat on the outer edge of the room's warmth. He carries it to the hearth. He does not throw it. To throw it would be to disturb the peace, to send sparks flying, to risk the equilibrium of the ash. He kneels on the stone hearth. The heat here is intense, a wall of infrared radiation that dries his eyes and flushes his skin. He picks up the iron poker. It is a simple rod of wrought iron, the end hooked and blackened by years of fire. He inserts the hook into the bed of coals. He pushes the existing logs apart. They crumble slightly, the charred wood giving way to reveal the pulsing red heart of the fire. Crunch. Hiss. A pocket of gas escapes and ignites with a brief, blue flutter. He creates a cradle in the center of the embers, a depression of glowing heat waiting to receive the fuel. He places the oak log into the cradle. He lowers it gently, inch by inch, until it rests securely on the bed of coals. The contact is immediate. The bottom of the log begins to smoke, a thin gray wisp that curls up and is drawn instantly into the chimney. There is no flame yet, only the promise of it. The log settles with a heavy thump, shifting slightly as it finds its center of gravity. Elias uses the poker to rake the ashes up around the sides of the new log. This is the banking. The ash acts as an insulator, regulating the flow of air, ensuring the wood burns slowly from the inside out rather than being consumed in a flash of glory. He works methodically, piling the gray dust against the dark bark. Scrape, pile, scrape, pile. The sound of the iron on the stone is harsh but rhythmic, a sound of maintenance and care. He stands back and replaces the poker. He wipes his hands on his tunic. The fire is set. It will hold the cold at bay for 6 hours, perhaps 7. It is a sentinel that does not sleep. Elias has moved while he worked. She has put the knitting away in a woven willow basket. Now she is at the other side of the hearth, attending to a different task. On the stone shelf above the fire, 3 large, smooth river stones have been sitting. They are gray granite, worn perfectly round by centuries of tumbling in the river current before being plucked from the bed for this specific domestic purpose. They have been absorbing the heat of the fire all evening. They are not hot enough to burn, but they are too hot to hold comfortably with a bare hand. Elias takes a piece of thick flannel cloth. It is old, the nap worn down but still soft. She folds it into a square. She uses a pair of wooden tongs to lift the first stone from the shelf. The stone is heavy, dense with stored thermal energy. She places it in the center of the cloth. She folds the corners of the cloth over the stone, left, right, top, bottom. She ties the ends in a simple knot. The result is a heavy, warm bundle, a portable battery of heat. She repeats the process with the second stone. Elias watches her. This, too, is a ritual. It is the transition from the vertical world of the chair and the fire to the horizontal world of the bed. The bed is cold, she says. her voice barely carrying over the sound of the wind, which has begun to pick up again outside. "The stones will turn it," Elias replies. He walks over to the bed. It is built into the thickness of the wall, a wooden box lined with insulation. He pulls back the heavy fur coverlet. It is made of wolf skins, sewn together with sinew, the fur thick and coarse. Underneath is a blanket of woven wool, dyed a deep madder red, and underneath that the sheets of linen. The linen is cold. Elias places his hand on the sheet. It feels like ice against his warm palm. It is crisp, clean, and unyielding. It smells of lavender and the cold air in which it was dried. It is a shock to the system, a reminder that warmth is something that must be constructed, layer by layer. Alara approaches with the wrapped stones. She hands one to Elias. He takes it. The heat radiates through the flannel, instant and comforting. It is a solid, heavy warmth, different from the airy heat of the fire. This is heat with mass. He slides the stone down between the sheets, pushing it towards the foot of the bed. He moves it back and forth, ironing the cold out of the linen. Swish, swish. The sound of the flannel on the linen is dry and soft. He leaves the stone at the bottom where their feet will rest. Alara places the second stone in the middle of the bed, where the small of the back will go. She tucks the covers back in, trapping the heat. They stand there for a moment, looking at the slightly mounded shape of the bed. It is a landscape of comfort, a terrain of rest waiting to be occupied. The water, Elias reminds himself. He goes to the bucket near the door. The water in it has a thin film of ice forming on the surface, delicate fern-like patterns of crystal that shatter as he dips the ladle in. Crackle. He fills a clay cup. He drinks. The water is freezing, a shock to his teeth and throat. It tastes of the earth and the stone well it came from. It wakes him up for a second, sharpening his senses, before the warmth of the room wraps around him again. He checks the door one last time. He lifts the heavy iron bar that spans the width of the frame. He tests its seating in the iron brackets. It is solid. He leans his shoulder against the wood of the door. He can feel the vibration of the wind on the other side. It is a low, thrumming tremor like a giant animal breathing against the house. But the door does not rattle. The hinges are tight. The draft excluder, a sausage of stuffed wool nailed to the bottom of the door, is doing its job. No snow is blowing in. He turns back to the room. The candle on the table is burning low. The tallow has pooled in the saucer, a lake of liquid fat that reflects the flame. The wick is long and mushroomed at the tip, causing the flame to flicker and dance. Elias walks to the table. He picks up a small pair of iron snips. He carefully trims the wick. The blackened bit of carbon falls into the hot wax with a tiny hiss. The flame steadies, becoming a clear, bright teardrop of light. It illuminates the texture of the table, the knife marks, the stains of spilled wine from years ago, the polish of elbows. He looks at his gear piled neatly on the chest. His belt, his tunic, his boots. They look like artifacts from another life. The metal of the belt buckle glints in the candlelight. It is cold and hard, a tool of order. But here, unbuckled and coiled, it looks harmless. He begins to unfasten his tunic. He pulls the heavy wool over his head. The air of the room touches his skin. It is cooler than the space inside his clothes, but still warm. He folds the tunic carefully, matching the seams, smoothing the fabric. He places it on top of the chest. He is wearing a simple linen undershirt now, soft and worn thin. He feels lighter, unburdened. The armor of the day is gone. The persona of the soldier is hung on a peg. He is just a man in a room with a fire. Ilara has finished her preparations. She has loosened her hair. It falls down her back in a dark, heavy wave reaching to her waist. She is brushing it, stroke, stroke, stroke. The sound of the bristles through her hair is rhythmic and soothing, like the sound of waves on a distant shore. Elias watches the motion. Her arm rises, the brush descends, the hair follows. The snow has stopped, she observes. Elias listens. The wind is still there, but the soft hiss of flakes hitting the thatch has ceased. For now, he says, it will start again before dawn. The silence is loud, she whispers. It is the best sound, he replies. He moves to the window and presses his ear against the shutter. He can hear the settling of the house. The timbers are contracting in the cold, groaning softly. Creak. A rafter shifts. Groan. The house is adjusting, hunkering down, tightening its shell against the freezing night. It is a living thing, this house, breathing and shifting in response to the elements. He walks back to the hearth. He stands before the fire one last time. He holds his hands out to the heat, capturing a final dose of warmth to carry with him into the sheets. He looks at the new log. It is charring nicely, the bark turning into a grid of black scales, the red glow beginning to emanate from the cracks. It is a good fire. It will last. He looks at the shadows in the corners of the room. They are deep and velvety, places where the light does not reach. They are not menacing shadows. They are soft, enclosing shadows. They make the room feel smaller, more intimate. They draw the focus to the center, to the light, to the warmth. He feels a profound sense of tiredness wash over him. It is not the exhaustion of the march, which is sharp and painful. It is the fatigue of safety. It is the body realizing that it does not need to be alert anymore. His muscles loosen. His eyelids feel like lead. His breathing slows. "Ready?" Ilara asks. She has put the brush down. She is standing by the bed, pulling back the heavy fur coverlet. "Ready," Elias says. He walks towards the bed. The floorboards under his stockinged feet are smooth and solid. He steps onto the sheepskin rug that lies beside the bed. It is soft, deep, and luxurious between his toes. He sits on the edge of the bed. The mattress, a sack filled with fresh oat straw, rustles under his weight. Crunch. Rustle. It smells of the summer harvest, a dry, sweet, grassy scent that mingles with the lavender of the sheets. He swings his legs up. He slides down between the sheets. The linen is still cool in places, but where the hot stones have been, it is toasty. His feet find the flannel-wrapped stone at the bottom of the bed. The heat travels up his legs, a wave of pure comfort. He sighs, a long, shuddering exhalation that empties his lungs of the day. Ilara blows out the candle. The room plunges into semi-darkness. Only the fire remains, casting a low, red glow across the floor and the ceiling. The world shrinks to the radius of the hearth's light. Elias lies on his back, staring up at the beams of the ceiling. He can see the faint outline of the dried herbs hanging there. He can hear the fire popping. He can hear the wind. He can hear his own heart beating, slow and steady. He is warm, he is safe, he is hidden. The bed is a cocoon. The weight of the furs presses him down, anchoring him to the earth. The straw mattress conforms to his body, supporting his back, his shoulders, his legs. He shifts slightly, finding the perfect hollow. The straw whispers. Ilara climbs in beside him. The mattress shifts. She pulls the covers up to her chin. She radiates warmth. "Good night," she whispers. "Good night," he murmurs. The words hang in the air for a moment before dissolving into the silence. Elias closes his eyes. He listens to the house creak. He listens to the fire snap. He listens to the wind whoosh. He is not asleep yet. He is in the borderland, the gray zone between waking and dreaming. It is a place of perfect neutrality, a place where time does not exist. He floats there, suspended in the warmth, waiting for the tide of sleep to rise and carry him away. He thinks of the snow outside. He imagines it lying thick and white over the hills, over the trees, over the roof. He imagines the world buried in silence. And in the center of that silence, this room, this fire, this bed, a heartbeat in the ice. The transition from the vertical world of the hearth to the horizontal world of the bed is a profound shift in perspective. Elias lies on his back, his body sinking into the mattress of oat straw. The straw is not silent. It whispers with every minute adjustment of his weight. Rustle, crunch, settle. It is a dry, organic sound, smelling faintly of summer fields and dust, a scent that seems to have been baked into the golden stalks by a sun that is now a distant memory. He stares up into the darkness. The room is not truly dark. The fire, now banked and glowing with a deep, pulsing red heat, casts long, dancing shadows across the ceiling beams. The beams are old oak, hewn by hand centuries ago, their surfaces uneven and textured. In the firelight, the adze marks look like ripples on a dark pond, catching the light and holding it for a second before letting it slide away into the gloom. He pulls the heavy coverlet up to his chin. The weight of it is immense. It is a sandwich of layers. The linen sheet against his skin, cool and smooth. The wool blankets, thick and scratchy. And on top, the wolf pelt, heavy and dense with coarse guard hairs that tickle his cheek. The combined weight presses him down into the mattress, creating a sensation of being held, of being anchored to the earth against the pull of the cold wind outside. He can feel the heat of the flannel-wrapped stone at his feet. It is a solid block of warmth, radiating slowly through the layers of fabric. He flexes his toes against it. The heat seeps into his soles, traveling up his arches, his ankles, his calves. It is a delicious, creeping sensation that seems to melt the tension in his muscles, turning them to liquid. Beside him, Ilara breathes deeply. Her rhythm has already slowed to the cadence of sleep. It is a soft, regular sound. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause, that acts as a counterpoint to the crackle of the fire. Elias listens to it. He matches his own breathing to hers, syncing their rhythms in the quiet dark. The room is settling. The timbers of the roof contract in the cold air, giving off sudden, sharp cracks that sound like pistol shots in the silence. Pop, then silence again. The thatch above shifts as the wind presses down on it. Rustle. A draft finds its way through a tiny gap in the daub, whistling softly for a moment before being stifled by the heavy hangings on the walls. Elias closes his eyes. The darkness behind his eyelids is not black, but a warm, mottled orange, a residual image of the fire. He lets his mind drift. He thinks of the journey here. The crunch of the snow under his boots, the bite of the wind on his face, the solitude of the frozen road. It feels like a dream now, a distant memory belonging to another person. Here in this bed there is no wind, there is no snow, there is only warmth. He shifts his legs, the straw mattress complaining softly. He finds a hollow that fits his hip perfectly. He sinks deeper. The pillow is stuffed with goose down, soft and yielding. His head sinks into it, the feathers fluffing up around his ears, muffling the sounds of the room even further. He thinks about the morning. The thought is intrusive, a sharp edge in a world of soft curves. He pushes it away. The morning is hours off. The morning belongs to the trumpet and the roll call. Tonight belongs to the fire. He focuses on his feet again. The stone is still hot. He pushes it down a little further, stretching his legs to their full length. His muscles, tired from the patrol and the walk, respond with a dull ache that is slowly being massaged away by the heat. He feels a twitch in his left calf, a small spasm of relaxation, then another in his thigh. His hands are resting on his chest, clasped loosely together. They are warm now, the chill of the iron pilum and the bronze shield handle gone. He feels the pulse in his fingertips, a slow, steady throb. Thump, 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 thump. It is a reassuring sign of life in the quiet room. He opens his eyes again. A log in the fire shifts. It rolls forward, hitting the iron dogs with a metallic clink. A shower of sparks flies up the chimney, illuminating the soot-blackened bricks of the hearth. For a second, the room brightens, the shadows leaping back, before the log settles and the light dims to a steady, comforting glow. Elias watches the smoke drift up. It is barely visible, just a distortion in the air, a wavering of the firelight. He imagines it rising through the chimney, emerging into the cold night air and being snatched away by the wind. He imagines the sparks joining the stars, tiny pinpricks of light in the vast, indifferent universe. He turns onto his side, facing Elias. The movement is slow, a rolling of the entire body under the heavy covers. The straw rustles louder this time, crinkle crunch, before settling into silence. He pulls the blankets up over his ear, creating a tunnel of warmth. He can smell her hair, lavender and wood smoke. It is a scent of home. He feels a profound sense of boredom. It is a luxurious boredom, a complete absence of urgency. There is nothing to do. There is nowhere to be. The world has stopped. He is safe. He lets his mind wander to mundane things. He counts the dried herbs hanging from the rafters. Sage, thyme, rosemary, mint. He counts the pots on the shelf. 1, 2, 3, 4. He counts the knots in the wood of the ceiling beam above him. 1, 2, 3. The counting is soothing. It is a mental rosary, a repetition that occupies the surface of his mind while the deeper parts relax. 1 sheep, 2 sheep, 3 sheep. He imagines the sheep on the hill, their wool thick and greasy, huddled together against the stone walls. He imagines the shepherd's dog, curled up by the fire in a hut not unlike this one. He imagines the slow, rhythmic chewing of the cud. Chew, chew, chew. The image fades. He is drifting deeper now. The sounds of the room are becoming distant. The crackle of the fire is less distinct, merging with the sound of the wind into a single, continuous white noise. The warmth of the bed is all-encompassing. He feels heavy, as if his body is made of lead. He tries to move his foot. It feels miles away. He manages a small wiggle of his toes against the hot stone. It is enough. He listens to the house again. It is a ship sailing through a sea of ice. The timbers creak like masts. The wind howls like a gale in the rigging, but inside the cargo is safe. The crew is asleep. He thinks of the wall, the great stone wall that separates the empire from the wilderness. He has stood on it 1,000 times, watching the mist roll in from the north. It is a cold, hard place, but tonight the wall feels like a protector, a barrier that keeps the chaos at bay. He feels a sudden surge of gratitude for the stone masons who built it, for the men who quarried the rock, for the oxen that hauled it, for the mortar that binds it. It is a chain of effort that has led to this moment of peace. He sinks deeper into the mattress. The straw embraces him. The feathers cradle his head. The wool covers him. Warm, he whispers to himself. The word is barely a breath. The fire pops again. A soft phut. A blue flame dances on a piece of charcoal. Elias watches it through half-closed eyes. It is hypnotic. It flickers and waves, a tiny spirit of fire trapped in the wood. He watches it until it dies down, leaving only the steady red glow of the embers. He feels his breathing slowing down even more. His heart rate drops. He is entering the state of hibernation, the winter sleep. He thinks of the bear in the cave. He thinks of the badger in the set. He thinks of the seed in the frozen earth. They are all waiting. They are all sleeping. He is one with them. He is no longer Elias the soldier. He is just a warm body in a cold world. He feels a draft of cool air on his nose. He buries his face deeper in the pillow. The cold is a reminder of the warmth. It makes the heat of the bed feel even sweeter. He drifts, he floats, he sinks. The room is silent. The world is silent. The universe is silent. There is only the warmth and the slow, rhythmic beating of his own heart. Thump thump, thump thump, thump thump. The night deepens. It settles over the northern province like a physical weight, layer upon layer of darkness and cold pressing down upon the landscape. Inside the small house, time has dissolved. There is no water clock to mark the passing of the hours, no sundial to catch a shadow. There is only the slow, infinitesimal consumption of the oak log in the hearth and the rhythmic rise and fall of 2 chests under the heavy mound of furs. Elias is in the depths of the first sleep. It is a profound, restorative state, a biological shutdown where the mind releases its grip on the world of the Legion and sinks into the ancient, primitive comfort of the den. His body is motionless, a heavy shape beneath the covers. The tension that holds a soldier upright, the tightness in the calves, the brace of the shoulders, the vigilance of the neck, has completely unspooled. He lies on his side, his arm thrown loosely over the curve of the pillow, his fingers curled in a relaxed, open gesture. The room has changed in his absence from consciousness. The sharp, bright light of the earlier evening has mellowed and deepened. The candle was extinguished long ago, leaving the hearth as the sole source of illumination. The fire, having devoured the bark and the outer sapwood of the great oak log, has now bored its way into the dense heartwood. It no longer flickers with the erratic, dancing yellow flames of new combustion. Instead, it burns with a steady, sullen red glow, a deep infrared pulsing that barely illuminates the walls but saturates the room with heat. The light is low and directional. It catches the bottom edges of the hanging herbs, turning the dried sage leaves into silhouettes of silver and black. It highlights the grain of the floorboards, throwing the tiny valleys between the planks into deep shadow while the ridges glow with a faint, polished luster. It touches the rim of the clay water pitcher, creating a crescent moon of reflection on the glaze. The soundscape of the room has shifted, too. The sharp cracks and pops of the earlier fire have ceased. The moisture has all been driven from the wood. Now there is only the softest hiss of escaping gas, a sound so faint it is arguably part of the silence. The wind outside has altered its pitch. It no longer gusts or buffets the walls. Instead, it has settled into a continuous, high-altitude stream, a monotonous drone that wraps around the house like a flowing river of air. It is a sound that emphasizes the shelter, a reminder of the barrier between the in and the out. In this quiet, Elias dreams. His dream is not a narrative. It is not a story of battles or journeys. It is a dream of texture and repetition. In the dream, he is sitting on a wooden bench in the sun. The stone wall of the armory is behind him, radiating a gentle, stored warmth against his back. In his hands, he holds his helmet. It is made of iron and bronze, heavy and cool. He holds a rag, a piece of soft, oil-soaked wool. He is polishing the cheek piece. Circle, circle, circle. The motion is perfectly repetitive. He presses the rag against the metal. He feels the friction. He smells the oil, a mix of olive oil and beeswax, earthy and sweet. He watches the dull gray of the iron slowly transform. The tarnish lifts away, absorbed by the wool. The metal begins to shine. It catches the sunlight in the dream, reflecting a distorted image of the blue sky. He rubs the hinge of the cheek piece. He works the oil into the mechanism. Squeak, rub, silence. The hinge moves freely. He moves to the brow guard. The curve of the metal is smooth under his thumb. He traces the line of the reinforcement bar. He polishes the bronze rivets until they look like little golden eyes. There is no urgency in the dream. There is no inspection to prepare for. There is only the act of care, the simple satisfaction of maintaining a tool. The metal is real to him in the dream. He can feel its temperature, its hardness, its weight. The rhythm of the polishing becomes the rhythm of his sleep. Rub, rub, rub. Back in the room, the log shifts. The structure of the wood has been compromised by the heat. A section of charcoal breaks away from the main block. It tumbles 2 inches down into the bed of ash. Phut! A tiny cloud of gray dust puffs up, glowing orange for a split second as it catches the heat, then vanishing. The log settles into its new position with a soft groan of compressing carbon. The light in the room dims slightly as the surface area of the glow is reduced. The temperature in the room is beginning to stratify. Near the ceiling, where the heat rises, the air is still thick and summery. The herbs hanging there are brittle dry, suspended in an arid microclimate. Lower down, at the level of the table, the air is pleasantly warm. But along the floor, a very faint, creeping coolness has begun to establish itself. It is the influence of the frozen earth beneath the house, seeping up through the packed dirt floor, stealing the heat from the stones. But the bed is immune. The bed is a fortress. The box construction of the bed, raised off the floor and built into the thick daub wall, isolates the sleepers from the ground chill. The straw mattress, nearly 2 feet thick, acts as a massive insulator, trapping the body heat and reflecting it back. And above, the layers of wool and fur create a dead air space that is tropical in its intensity. Under the covers, the air is heavy and humid. It smells of the lavender sachets tucked into the linen, but also of warm skin and sleep. The flannel-wrapped stone at the foot of the bed has lost its intense, burning heat, settling into a gentle, enduring warmth. It is no longer a hot coal, it is a warm companion. Elias' feet are still pressed against it, his toes curled into the soft flannel. Elias shifts. The movement is subconscious. She turns away from the wall, seeking the source of heat that is Elias. The straw mattress rustles, crackle shhh, as her weight redistributes. The heavy wolf pelt slides an inch, the fur brushing against the wooden frame of the bed with a sound like wind in dry grass. She settles again, her back pressing against Elias' chest. He does not wake. He adjusts instinctively to her presence. His arm, heavy with sleep, drapes over her waist. The contact is grounding. It completes the circuit of warmth. They are a single thermal unit now, preserving energy against the northern night. Outside, the snow begins to fall again. It is not the blizzard of the evening. It is a vertical, silent deposition. The wind has dropped just enough to allow the flakes to fall straight down. They are large, wet flakes, heavy with moisture. They land on the thatch of the roof. Pat, pat, pat. The sound is incredibly faint, audible only to the beams of the house. The snow accumulates. It fills the microscopic gaps in the thatch, sealing the roof even tighter. It piles up on the window ledge, covering the wooden shutter in a second layer of insulation. It drifts against the bottom of the door, covering the draft excluder, sealing the crack where the cold air had been sniffing for an entrance. The house is being buried. It is being wrapped in a blanket of white that muffles sound and traps heat. Elias' dream shifts. The polishing is done. The helmet is finished. Now in the dream he is walking. He is walking through a warehouse of grain. The air is filled with dust, golden and hanging in shafts of sunlight. He is walking between towering sacks of burlap. They are stacked to the ceiling, filled with wheat and barley. He runs his hand along the burlap. It is rough, scratchy, and warm. He can smell the grain, a dry, dusty, wholesome smell. He hears the sound of grain being poured somewhere in the distance. Shhh, shhh. It sounds like water but drier. It is the sound of plenty. It is the sound of survival. He walks and walks. There is no end to the warehouse. There are just endless rows of food stored against the winter. He feels a deep, abiding sense of security. The legions will eat. The village will eat. There is enough. The sensation of the rough burlap in the dream merges with the sensation of the wool blanket against his chin in the waking world. The scratchiness is real. It is a tactile anchor that keeps him comfortably situated in the physical realm, while his mind wanders the corridors of stored harvest. The fire is dying down further. The red glow has deepened to a dark cherry color. A layer of gray ash has formed over the top of the log, muting the light even further. The room is now almost entirely dark, save for the faint, spooky luminescence of the embers reflecting off the whitewashed walls. The shadows have merged into a single, encompassing darkness that fills the corners and the spaces under the furniture. It is the hour of the wolf, that deep, silent trough in the middle of the night when the world is at its lowest ebb, the time when the old and the sick slip away, and when the healthy sleep their deepest. In the fort a mile away, the sentries are changing. The sound of the hobnailed boots on the frozen stone of the ramparts is sharp and loud, clack, clack, clack. The men coming off watch are stiff, their beards frosted with rime, their fingers numb inside their mittens. They descend into the warmth of the guardhouse, stamping their feet, greeting the fire with groans of relief. The men going on watch brace themselves, wrapping their cloaks tight, stepping out into the white silence. But here in the village, there is no changing of the guard. There is only the continuity of rest. A mouse wakes up in the wall. It is a small field mouse that has made its winter home in the gap between the wattle and the outer cladding. It scampers along a run it has chewed through the dried mud. Scritch, scratch, scritch. The sound is tiny, a miniature percussion inside the wall. It pauses, listening. It hears the breathing of the humans, the slow, oceanic tide of their sleep. It determines that it is safe. It moves on, its tiny claws clicking softly on a wooden lath. Elias hears the sound in his sleep, but his brain does not flag it as a threat. It is categorized as a natural sound, a part of the house's ecology. It weaves into his dream. Now the pouring grain sounds like tiny feet. Scritch, scratch. It is a friendly sound. He rolls onto his back. The movement is slow, like a log rolling in a river. The heavy covers tent up for a moment, creating a cavity of cooler air before settling back down around him. He sighs, a long, shuddering breath that vibrates in his throat. The flannel-wrapped stone at his feet has finally cooled to body temperature. It is no longer a heater, but it is not cold. It remains a solid presence, a memory of the fire that burned hours ago. The room is now in a state of thermal equilibrium. The heat from the dying fire matches the heat lost through the walls. The temperature holds steady. It is cool enough to make the nose tip cold, but warm enough to keep the air comfortable for breathing. It is the perfect sleeping temperature. Elias' mind sinks deeper, past the dreams of polishing and grain, into the void. This is the black, dreamless sleep, the sleep of total recovery. His heart rate slows to 40 beats per minute. His breathing is shallow and efficient. His body is repairing the micro-tears in his muscles from the march. It is knitting together the fibers, replenishing the energy stores. He is a statue of flesh, wrapped in wool, buried in straw, hidden in snow. The silence is absolute. Even the mouse has stopped moving. The wind has smoothed out into a constant pressure that makes no noise. The fire has settled into a silent smolder. There is nothing but the dark, the warm, soft, heavy dark. It wraps around him like a second skin. It fills his ears. It fills his mind. He is safe. He is warm. He is asleep. The night has turned. The profound, impenetrable blackness of the wolf hour has begun to dilute, shifting imperceptibly toward the deep, bruised purple of the pre-dawn. It is not yet morning. The sun is still hours away, hidden far below the curvature of the frozen earth. But the absolute tyranny of midnight has passed. The world is holding its breath, suspended in the vacuum between the end of dreams and the beginning of duty. Inside the cottage, the fire has completed its transformation. The great oak log, which had burned with such steady determination earlier in the night, is now a landscape of ruins. It has collapsed in on itself, forming a topography of glowing red valleys and peaks of gray ash. The heat it emits is no longer the fierce, drying radiation of the evening flame. It is a soft, residual warmth, a memory of fire that hangs in the air like a ghost. The light it casts is faint, a dim, coppery glow that barely reaches the rafters, leaving the upper reaches of the room in deep shadow. The silence has changed quality again. It is no longer the heavy, drugged silence of deep sleep. It is a brittle, expectant silence. The wind outside has died down completely, leaving the air still and stratified. The snow on the roof acts as a perfect sound dampener, absorbing the vibrations of the world, creating a sensory deprivation tank within the walls. Elias wakes. He does not wake with a start. There is no sudden gasp, no jerking of limbs. His training has instilled in him an internal chronometer, a biological clock calibrated to the rhythms of the watch. He wakes as a submarine surfaces, slowly, deliberately, rising from the crushing depths of sleep through the layers of consciousness until he breaks the surface. His eyes open. For a long moment he does not move. He lies perfectly still, his body preserving the heat he has gathered. He stares up at the ceiling beams. In the dim red light of the embers, they look like the ribs of a giant whale protecting him within its belly. He blinks once, twice, feeling the heaviness of his eyelids, the crust of sleep in the corners of his eyes. He takes stock of his physical state. His legs are warm, heavy, and relaxed. The flannel-wrapped stone at his feet has cooled to a tepid temperature, barely distinguishable from his own body heat. His torso is comfortable under the weight of the wolf's skins, but his nose is cold. The tip of his nose is an icy point of reference, a sensor telling him exactly what the air temperature in the room has become. It has dropped. The frost is pressing against the shutter. The cold is seeping up through the floor. He listens. Beside him, Alara is deep in the rhythm of her own sleep. Her breathing is a soft, rhythmic sigh. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. It is the most peaceful sound in the world. It is the sound of safety. He turns his head slowly on the pillow, the feathers crunching softly crump near his ear. He looks at the back of her head, the dark wave of her hair spread out on the white linen. He feels a pang of regret. To leave this warmth, to leave this peace, seems like a violation of the natural order. But the Legion waits, the roll call waits, the sun will not wait. He begins the process of extraction. It is a surgical procedure. He must remove himself from the bed without waking her, without letting the cold air rush in to steal her warmth. He lifts his left arm. The movement is slow, fighting the gravity of the covers. He grips the edge of the heavy fur coverlet. He peels it back inch by inch. The cold air of the room rushes into the gap, stinging his exposed skin. He grits his teeth against the shock. He slides his legs out, moving them over the edge of the mattress. The straw ticks, rustle, scritch. It sounds deafeningly loud to his ears, like walking through dry autumn leaves. He pauses, freezing mid-motion, watching Elias. She does not stir. She adjusts slightly, murmuring something unintelligible into her pillow, and settles back into the deep rhythm. Elias exhales a breath he didn't know he was holding. He slides further. His feet touch the sheepskin rug on the floor. The sensation is complex. The wool of the rug is soft and yielding, but the floor beneath it is hard and cold. The chill travels up his shins instantly. He sits on the edge of the bed for a moment, his elbows on his knees, his head hanging down. He rubs his face with his hands. His skin feels rough, the stubble on his chin rasping against his calloused palms. Scrape, scrape. He stands. His knees crack, pop, a sharp sound in the quiet room. He winces, he waits. Silence returns. He is wearing only his linen under-tunic. It is thin, offering little protection against the room's chill. Goose flesh rises on his arms immediately. He shivers, a violent, involuntary spasm that runs from his shoulders to his hips. He wraps his arms around himself, hugging his own ribs, trying to retain his core temperature. He moves towards the chest where his clothes are piled. He walks on the balls of his feet, testing each floorboard before committing his weight. He knows the geography of this floor, the creaky board near the table, the loose one near the hearth. He navigates them by memory, a ghost moving through the gloom. He reaches the chest. His gear lies there, a dark mound of wool and leather. He picks up his tunic. It is cold. It has been sitting in the ambient air of the room all night, and the wool has absorbed the chill. He holds it for a second, staling himself. Then he pulls it over his head. The fabric hits his skin like a sheet of ice. He gasps silently, his breath hissing through his teeth. He pulls it down quickly, trapping a layer of air between the linen and the wool. He rubs his arms vigorously, swish, 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 generating friction, encouraging the blood to flow, waiting for his body heat to warm the fibers. Next, the socks. He finds them on the stool where he left them. They are stiff, retaining the shape of his feet. He sits on the chest to put them on. He lifts his left foot. He pulls the wool sock on. It is a struggle. The cold wool drags against his skin. He tugs the heel into place. Then the right foot. He wiggles his toes, encased now in thick yarn. The sensation of warmth begins to return to his extremities. He reaches for his trousers, the brachy. They are leather, lined with felt. He steps into them, pulling them up over his hips. He fumbles with the drawstring in the dark. His fingers are clumsy, numb from the cold. He ties the knot by feel, testing it twice to ensure it holds. Now the boots. This is the longest task. He picks up the left boot. The leather is cold and hard, having lost the pliability of body heat. He forces his foot into the opening. He has to push hard. Shuck. His heel slides home. He begins to lace. The leather thongs are stiff. He threads the lace through the bottom eyelet. He pulls, creak. The leather complains. He crosses the laces. Over, under, pull, over, under, pull. He works his way up the ankle, focusing entirely on the tension. If it is too loose, snow will get in. If it is too tight, his feet will go numb. He finds the perfect balance, a memory stored in his muscles. He ties the final knot at the top of the calf, tucking the ends away. He repeats the process with the right boot, shuck, thread, pull, cross, pull, tie. He stands up fully dressed. The weight of the clothes is familiar, comforting. He feels armored again, prepared to face the exterior world. He walks to the hearth. The embers are fading fast now. A layer of gray ash covers almost everything. He picks up the iron poker. It is cold to the touch now and gently stirs the ash. He uncovers a single glowing red coal the size of a walnut. It is the seed of tomorrow's fire. He reaches for the bucket of peat turf standing by the wall. He takes 2 small blocks of peat, dark and fibrous. He places them carefully over the ember. He does not want them to flare up. He wants them to smolder to keep the coal alive until Ilara wakes. He banks the ash up around them, burying the heat. The peat begins to smoke almost instantly, a thin, aromatic wisp that smells of the earth and ancient roots. He replaces the poker, clink. He turns to the table. The remains of their meal are gone, cleared away the night before. But on the corner of the table, Ilara has left something, a small cloth bundle. Elias picks it up. It is heavy. He squeezes it gently. It feels like bread, a heel of the dense rye loaf and a wedge of hard cheese, a traveler's breakfast. He feels a warmth in his chest that has nothing to do with the fire. He tucks the bundle into the pouch at his belt. He picks up his sagum, the heavy military cloak. He swings it around his shoulders. The weight settles on him, pressing him down, grounding him. He finds the bronze fibula on the shelf. The metal is freezing. He struggles to push the pin through the thick layers of wool. His fingers are stiff. He pushes harder, scritch. The pin goes through. He locks it. He pulls the hood up. The wool covers his ears, muffling the sound of his own breathing. He wraps his scarf around his neck, burying his chin in the fabric. He is ready. He walks back to the bed. He stands there for a long moment, looking down at the sleeping form of his wife. He cannot see her face clearly in the dark, only the curve of her cheek and the dark mass of her hair. He listens to her breathing one last time. Inhale, exhale. He reaches out and gently pulls the wolf skin up higher, tucking it around her shoulder where the draft might catch her. She sighs in her sleep, burying her face deeper into the pillow. He steps back. He walks to the door. He lifts the heavy iron bar. It is heavy, cold, and solid. He lifts it slowly, terrified of a squeak. The metal slides against the bracket with a low, grinding sound, grrrrrrt, that sounds like a shout in the silence. He freezes. He looks at the bed. Ilara does not move. He sets the bar down against the wall. He grips the leather latch of the door. He prepares himself for the shock. He knows what is on the other side. He pulls the door handle. The door sticks for a second, frozen to the frame by a thin seal of ice. He pulls harder. Crack. The ice seal breaks. The door swings inward. The cold hits him like a physical blow. It is solid, absolute, and biting. It rushes into the warm room, swirling around his ankles, seeking the heat. He steps out quickly, turning immediately to close the door. He pushes it shut. He leans his weight against it, compressing the draft excluder, ensuring the latch clicks home. Click. He stands on the step. He is out. The transition is shocking. The silence of the house is replaced by the silence of the world, which is vast and indifferent. The air is so cold it burns his lungs as he inhales. It tastes of pure ice. It is still dark, but the darkness has a quality of gray to it now. The snow has stopped falling. The sky above is a heavy, low ceiling of clouds, reflecting the faint, ghostly luminescence of the snow-covered land. The world is white and gray. The shapes of the village are softened, buried under fresh drifts. The woodpile is a white mound. The fence is a white line. The road is a white river. Elias stands there adjusting. He pulls his mittens from his belt and puts them on. He stamps his feet gently, thump, thump to settle his socks in his boots. He looks at the sky. He looks at the horizon where the sun will eventually rise. There is no line of light yet, only a subtle lightening of the gray. He turns his collar up. He breathes out, a massive cloud of steam erupting from his scarf, hanging in the still air for a moment before vanishing. He takes the first step off the cleared path and into the fresh snow. Crunch! The sound is loud. The snow is fresh, powdery on top, with a crust forming underneath. He begins to walk. The door clicks shut. The latch engages with a sound that is final and metallic, a sharp clack that is instantly swallowed by the immense, muffled silence of the pre-dawn snow. Elias stands on the small stone step of the cottage, his back pressed against the wood, his hand still resting on the iron handle. He does not move immediately. He allows himself a moment of transition, a pause to recalibrate his senses from the womb-like warmth of the interior to the crystalline, absolute zero of the exterior world. The cold is not merely a temperature here, it is a medium. It is a physical substance that presses against him from all sides. It touches the exposed skin of his face, the bridge of his nose, the high points of his cheekbones, the thin skin of his eyelids, with a sensation that burns. It is a dry, purifying cold. It tightens the pores instantly. It seeps through the first layer of his woolen scarf, seeking the warmth of his neck, but is stopped by the second and third windings of the heavy fabric. He takes his first true breath of the morning. The air enters his nostrils with a sharpness that makes him blink. It travels down his throat, a column of ice, and fills his lungs. It is clean. It is devoid of the smells of the cottage, no wood smoke, no lavender, no baking bread. It smells only of ozone, of frozen water, and of the vast, sleeping earth. He exhales, and the breath leaves him as a dense, white plume, a billow of steam that hangs suspended in the stillness before slowly drifting upward to join the gray canopy of the sky. He looks at the sky. It is no longer the pitch black of the deep night. A subtle, almost imperceptible shift has occurred in the heavens. The darkness has lifted just enough to reveal the heavy texture of the clouds. They are a uniform sheet of slate gray, stretching from horizon to horizon, pressing down upon the world. There is no moon. There are no stars. There is only the diffuse, scattered light of a sun that is still far below the rim of the world, filtering through layers of atmosphere and ice crystals to create a ghostly, shadowless twilight. This is the gloaming, the hour before the world wakes. Elias adjusts his cloak. He reaches up and checks the fibula at his shoulder, ensuring the bronze pin is secure. He pulls the folds of the sagum tighter across his chest, creating a double layer of wool over his heart. He tugs his mittens up, covering his wrists, sealing the gap between his tunic and his hands. He steps off the stone threshold. Crunch! His boot breaks the crust of the fresh snow. During the night, while he slept in the warmth of the box bed, the snow had fallen silently, adding another 2 inches to the depth. It covers the path he swept yesterday. It covers the footprints he made upon arrival. The world has been reset. It is a blank page of white, waiting to be written upon again. He begins to walk. The sensation of walking in fresh snow is distinct. It is not like walking on earth or stone. There is a resistance. As he lifts his leg, the snow clings briefly to the leather of his boot. As he brings his foot down, the heel strikes first, breaking the surface tension. The foot sinks, compressing the crystals beneath the sole. Squeak crunch. The sound is high-pitched, a testament to the low temperature. Wet snow splashes, cold snow squeaks. This snow is very cold. He walks down the short path to the gate. The willow hurdle is frosted white, the individual strands of the weave outlined in rhyme. He reaches out with a mittened hand and pushes it open. It swings silently on its leather hinges, the snow around the base acting as a soft brake. He steps through and closes it behind him, looping the rope over the post. He pats the top of the post, a small, habitual gesture of farewell to the house and the sleeper within. He turns onto the lane of the vicus. The village is a graveyard of silence. The houses huddle together, dark shapes against the gray snow. The roofs are heavy white triangles, their eaves drooping low under the weight of the drifts. There are no lights in the windows. The shutters are bolted tight. The only sign of life is the smoke rising from the chimneys. Elias stops for a moment to watch the smoke. It does not billow or swirl. In the absolute stillness of the morning air, the columns of smoke rise straight up, vertical gray pillars connecting the roofs to the sky. They are perfectly straight, unbending, undisturbed by even the slightest breath of wind. They look solid, like pillars of gray marble supporting the clouds. It is a mesmerizing sight, a display of fluid dynamics in a frozen world. He continues his walk, crunch, crunch, crunch. The rhythm is slow. There is no need to rush. The trumpet for the first watch is still an hour away. This walk is a bridge between his 2 lives, and he intends to cross it deliberately. He passes the house with the woodpile. The tarp is covered in snow, a smooth white ramp. He passes the house with the goat pen. The animals are silent, huddled together in their shelter, a warm mass of fur and breath. He passes the community well. The bucket hangs motionless from its chain, a cone of ice forming on its rim where the water dripped and froze. The village falls behind him. The houses thin out, replaced by the low stone walls of the paddocks, and then by the open scrub of the moorland. He is now in the open country. Here the silence is different. In the village, the silence felt contained, a held breath between walls. Out here, the silence is expansive. It stretches for miles in every direction, a vast, indifferent emptiness. The only sound in the entire world is the rhythm of his own body, the thud of his heart in his ears, the hiss of his breath in the scarf, the crunch of his boots on the road. He finds the tracks of the cart from yesterday. They are faint now, filled with the fresh snow, visible only as shallow depressions running parallel to the road. He steps into the rut. The snow is more packed here, offering a firmer footing. He settles into a cadence. Left foot, crunch, sink, push off. Right foot, crunch, sink, push off. The motion warms him. The large muscles of his thighs, working against the resistance of the snow and the weight of his boots, begin to generate heat. He can feel the warmth blooming in his quadriceps, radiating outward. It travels up his back, trapped by the layers of wool. He is a self-contained engine of heat moving through the ice. He becomes aware of the temperature of his own body. His core is hot, almost sweating under the heavy tunic and cloak. His hands are warm inside the mittens. His feet are comfortable in the thick socks, but his face remains exposed to the bite of the air. It is a pleasant contrast. The sharp cold on his cheeks highlights the warmth of the rest of him. It keeps him alert, keeps him from sleepwalking, while the rhythm of the march lulls his mind into a trance. The road curves. He approaches the lone oak tree. In the pre-dawn light, the tree looks different than it did the night before. Yesterday, it was a silhouette against the dark. Now, in the gray light, he can see the details of its bark. The deep fissures are filled with driven snow, creating vertical stripes of black and white. The branches are coated in frost, every twig thickened by a layer of crystal. It looks like a sculpture made of iron and glass. He pauses by the tree. He does not know why, but it feels right to stop. He leans his shoulder against the trunk. The bark is rough and rock hard. He looks out over the fields. The mist is rising. Down in the hollows where the frozen stream runs, a low, dense fog has begun to form. It is whiter than the snow, a thick, milky soup that pools in the lowest points of the landscape. It is stationary, sitting heavy on the ice. As Elias watches, the level of the mist seems to rise imperceptibly, creeping up the banks, softening the edges of the reeds, blurring the line between the earth and the air. It is a world without color. Everything is rendered in shades of gray: charcoal gray for the tree trunks, slate gray for the sky, pearl gray for the mist, silver gray for the ice, and the white, the endless, varying white of the snow. He pushes off from the tree. He resumes his walk. The cold is seeping into his boots now. Not a painful cold, but a reminder. The leather, though greased, is conductive. The snow is relentless. He wiggles his toes as he walks, curling them inside the socks, grip, release, to keep the blood flowing. He focuses on the sensation of the wool against his skin. It is scratchy, familiar, and life-saving. He reaches the bridge. The wooden planks of the bridge are treacherous. They are coated in a sheet of verglas, a thin, transparent layer of ice formed by the rising damp of the river freezing on the timber. Elias slows down. He shortens his stride. He places his feet flat, maximizing the surface area of the leather sole against the ice. He walks to the center of the bridge and stops. He looks over the rail. Below, the river is a study in resistance. The edges are frozen solid, thick slabs of white ice clinging to the banks. But in the center, a channel of black water still flows. It is dark, oily, and silent. It moves sluggishly, burdened by slush. As he watches, a plate of ice breaks off from the upstream edge and floats down, spinning slowly in the current. It hits the stationary ice with a soft clink, the sound of glass on glass, before being pulled under the shelf. The sound of the water is muffled by the ice, a low, gurgling murmur that sounds like voices speaking deep underground. Burble, glug, hush. Elias listens. The sound is hypnotic. It draws him in. He watches the black water disappear under the white ice. It is a reminder of the forces at work beneath the surface of the quiet winter. The current never stops. The cold never stops. He lifts his head. Ahead of him, looming out of the gray mist, is the fortress. It is a massive, geometric shadow. The walls are high and flat, interrupted only by the square towers at intervals. In this light, the stone looks black. The fort looks like a natural feature, a cliff face that has erupted from the snow. There are lights on the walls. Torches burn in iron sconces, their flames flickering orange against the gray. They are small, struggling points of warmth in the vastness of the stone. Elias can see the silhouette of a sentry moving along the parapet. The figure is small, a doll wrapped in wool, pacing back and forth to keep warm. Elias steps off the bridge. His boots find the snow of the road again. Crunch. The sound is reassuring after the silence of the ice. He approaches the defensive ditches. The berms are smooth white mounds, the deadly spikes and traps buried under 3 feet of drift. The fort looks peaceful, dormant, but Elias knows the reality. Inside those walls, hundreds of men are sleeping, breathing, waiting. The granaries are full. The armory is locked. The machine of the empire is merely idling. He walks toward the postern gate. The wind begins to pick up again. It is a morning breeze, shifting the air masses as the sun approaches the horizon. It blows across the open snow, picking up loose crystals and swirling them around Elias' boots in little eddies of white dust. Swish. Hiss. The snow snakes across the road, a dry, whispering river of ice. Elias buries his chin deeper in his scarf. The wind bites at his exposed forehead. He narrows his eyes, creating a slit to protect his vision. He focuses on the small wooden door set into the massive main gate. That is his target. That is the portal back to duty. He reaches the outer perimeter. The snow is trampled here, a chaotic mess of footprints frozen into hard ridges. He navigates them carefully, stepping in the valleys between the ridges to avoid twisting an ankle. He reaches the gate. The wood of the great doors is dark, stained with moisture and age. Iron bands reinforce the timber, studded with massive rivets that are frosted white. Elias stands before the small pedestrian door. He does not knock. He waits. There is a small viewing slit in the door, a square covered by a sliding panel. The panel slides back. Scrape. A pair of eyes appears in the darkness of the slit. They are tired eyes, rimmed with red, surrounded by the shadow of a helmet. "Name," a voice whispers from the other side. It is a hoarse whisper, rough with cold. Elias' third cohort. The eyes blink. A pause. The sentry is checking the mental roster, the informal list of those permitted to vanish for the night. "Cold walk," the voice says. "The coldest," Elias replies. The panel slides shut. Click. Then the sound of the heavy iron bar being lifted. Thud. Grind. The groan of the lock. The click of the latch. The door opens inward. Elias steps through. He passes through the thickness of the wall, a tunnel of stone that smells of damp masonry and old torch smoke. He emerges into the intervallum, the road that runs around the inside of the walls. He is back. The transition is immediate. The silence of the open moor is replaced by the subtle, low-frequency hum of the garrison. Even in sleep, the fort makes noise. There is the distant stamp of a horse in the stables, the clatter of a pot from the cookhouse where the bakers are starting the morning bread, the cough of a man in a nearby barrack block. Elias turns to the sentry. The man is wrapped in a thick cloak, leaning on his pillow. He nods at Elias. It is a camaraderie of the freeze. "Coffee is on in the guardroom," the sentry mutters. "I'll head to the barracks," Elias says softly. "Get an hour before the horn." "Lucky." Elias turns away. He walks down the Via Sagularis. The snow here has been cleared, shoveled into high banks against the walls. The road is cobbled stone, slick with frost. His boots make a harder sound here. Clack, clack, clack. He walks past the rows of barracks. They are long, low buildings with tiled roofs. Smoke rises from every chimney, uniting in a haze that hangs over the fort, trapping the smells of wood smoke, unwashed wool, and humanity. It is a pungent, familiar smell. It smells of work. It smells of the army. He reaches the block of the third cohort. The building is dark. The windows are shuttered. He steps onto the wooden walkway. He stamps his feet, knocking the loose snow from his boots. Thump, thump. He brushes the snow from his shoulders, shaking his cloak like a wet dog. A cloud of white dust falls to the planks. He reaches for the door handle. It is the same iron ring he turned 10 hours ago. It feels the same. Cold, smooth, heavy. He turns it, he pushes. The door opens. The wall of heat hits him. It is a physical force. The air inside the barracks is thick, humid, and intensely warm. It smells of 80 men, of drying leather, of old sweat, and of the charcoal brazier. To anyone else, it might be stifling. To Elias, fresh from the frozen moor, it is an embrace. He steps inside and closes the door. The latch clicks. The wind is gone. The gray sky is gone. The silence of the snow is gone. He is enveloped in the sound of sleeping men. The snores, the deep breaths, the rustle of straw mattresses. It is a choir of unconsciousness. He stands in the small vestibule for a moment, letting his eyes adjust to the gloom. The brazier in the center of the room is a low mound of red coals, casting a faint, amber light that barely reaches the corners. He begins to unfasten his cloak. His fingers are stiff, clumsy with the sudden return of warmth. He fumbles with the fibula. Click. It opens. He pulls the heavy wool from his shoulders. He folds it by feel, draping it over his arm. He walks down the central aisle. He moves silently, a shadow among shadows. He passes the bunks. Bunk 1, bunk 2, bunk 3. He reaches his own space. It is exactly as he left it, the chest at the foot, the bunk above him, the empty mattress waiting. He sits on the chest. He begins to unlace his boots. Pick, pull, loosen. The leather is wet now, the snow melting in the warmth of the room. He pulls the laces free. He grips the heel, shuck. The boot comes off. He sets it aside. Shuck. The other one follows. He peels off his socks. His feet are pale and cold, but the blood is already rushing back, bringing a tingle of warmth. He rubs them briskly. He stands and removes his tunic. He folds it and places it in the chest. He is back to his linen under tunic. He climbs into the bunk. The straw mattress is cool, but the blanket he left behind retains a phantom memory of warmth. He pulls the heavy gray wool up to his chin. He curls onto his side, facing the wall. He closes his eyes. The walk is over, the visit is over, the secret is safe. He listens to the rhythm of the barracks. Inhale, exhale, snore, shift. He feels the fatigue of the night settle over him like a heavy blanket. His legs are heavy. His eyes are stinging with tiredness. He has an hour, maybe less, but it is enough. He lets the image of the cottage fill his mind. The fire, the tea, the blue wool, the sleeping woman. He stores them away, locking them in a mental chest, deep in the back of his mind where the sergeant's voice cannot reach them. He drifts. The transition from the cold road to the warm bunk is the final journey. He sinks into the straw. The darkness of the barracks is warm and brown. He sleeps. The barracks of the third cohort is a vessel of collective unconsciousness, floating in the pre-dawn darkness of the northern winter. 80 men lie in rows, stacked in double bunks, their bodies wrapped in identical gray wool blankets, their breathing sinking and descending in a slow, tidal rhythm that fills the long wooden hall. Elias lies in the bottom bunk, third from the far wall. He has just returned from the ice, from the wind, from the secret warmth of the village. Now he is reintegrating into the hive. He lies on his back, his eyes closed, but his other senses are acutely awake, cataloging the environment with the heightened sensitivity of someone who has just traversed the boundary between two worlds. The straw mattress beneath him is not merely a sack of dried stalks. To his tired body, it feels like a complex topography of comfort. He can feel the individual stems of the oat straw through the linen ticking, the knots, the bends, the crushed hollows where his hips and shoulders settle. He shifts his weight infinitesimally to the left. Crinkle, hush. The straw adjusts, accepting his form, cradling him. The warmth of the room is a physical substance. It is heavy, humid, and smells of humanity. It is distinct from the dry, resinous heat of the cottage fire he left an hour ago. That was a domestic heat, sharp with pine and herbs. This is a military heat, dense with the smell of 80 pairs of drying boots, of oiled leather armor, of charcoal dust, and of the deep, earthy scent of sleep. It settles in his lungs, heavier than the cold air outside, slowing his respiration, weighing him down. Elias focuses on his feet. 10 minutes ago, they were numb inside frozen leather boots, pounding against the hard-packed snow of the road. Now, liberated from the confines of the caligy and the thick socks, they are naked under the rough wool of the army blanket. He wiggles his toes. A tingling sensation like 1,000 tiny, soft needles prickles across his skin as the capillaries dilate, flushing with fresh, warm blood. It is an exquisite sensation, the feeling of life returning to the extremities. He stretches his arches, pointing his toes toward the foot of the bunk, feeling the satisfying pull in his calves. He pulls the blanket up higher. The wool is coarse, woven from the fleece of tough mountain sheep. It scratches gently against his chin, a tactile anchor that keeps him grounded in the present moment. He tucks the edge of the blanket under his shoulder, creating a seal against the draft that might wander along the floorboards. He is a cocoon. He is a sealed unit of heat. In the center of the room, the great iron brazier is in its final stage of the night. The heap of coals has burned down to a low, slumbering mound of gray ash and deep, dark red embers. Occasionally, a pocket of gas escapes from the heart of the pile with a soft phut, casting a momentary, ghostly orange flicker across the floorboards. Elias watches the light through his eyelids. It is a warm, red pulse, like the heartbeat of the room. He listens to the sounds of the cohort. To his left, the heavy, rhythmic snoring of Marcus, a sound like a saw cutting through wet wood. RZZZZ. Hugh. RZZZZ. Hugh. To his right, the soft, whistling breath of young Valerius, who sleeps with his mouth slightly open. From the bunk above, the occasional rustle of a turning body, the creak of the wooden frame transferring the movement down through the posts. Creak. Squeak. These sounds are the soundtrack of his life. They are monotonous, repetitive, and deeply comforting. They tell him that the unit is whole. They tell him that the guard is set. They tell him that for this brief window of time, there is no war, no drill, no labor. There is only existence. He lets his mind drift back to the walk. The memory is already beginning to soften, the sharp edges of the cold blurring into a dreamlike impression. He remembers the crunch of the snow. Crunch, crunch. He remembers the silence of the white fields. He remembers the warmth of the cottage. He reaches down to his belt, which lies coiled on the chest beside his bunk. His fingers brush against the leather pouch. He can feel the hard shape of the bread and cheese wrapped in the cloth inside. The breakfast. It is real. It is a tangible piece of the world outside the walls brought back in. He smiles in the darkness, a secret smile that no one sees. The visit was a success. The risk was taken and the reward was secured. He has stocked his internal storehouse with enough warmth to last him through the coming week of patrols and inspections. He holds the image of Alara's face in his mind, the way the firelight caught her eyes, the slow movement of her hands as she knitted the blue wool. He locks this image away. He places it in a mental box, seals the lid, and buries it deep within his consciousness, where the shouting of the centurion cannot reach it. Outside, the dawn is beginning to think about approaching. It is still dark, but the quality of the darkness is changing. The heavy, velvety black of the night is thinning, turning into a cold, hard gray. The wind has picked up again, whistling around the corners of the barracks, rattling a loose shutter somewhere down the line. Clatter-tap, clatter-tap. But the sound is distant. It belongs to the outside. Inside, the air remains still and protected. Elias feels a profound heaviness in his limbs. The walk has drained him of nervous energy, leaving him in a state of pure physical relaxation. His arms feel like lead weights sinking into the mattress. His head feels heavy on the pillow, a small sack of grain stuffed with straw that smells of the summer harvest. He nestles deeper, finding the hollow that fits the back of his skull perfectly. He counts the breaths of the man next to him. 1, 2, 3, 4. The counting is a ladder leading him down from the alert state of the walker, down from the vigilant state of the soldier, down into the subterranean world of the sleeper. He thinks about the concept of the winter visit. It is an ancient tradition, unspoken but understood. The legions build walls to keep the world out, but the men are part of the world. They need the touch of soft wool, the taste of fresh bread, the sound of a woman's voice. They are the threads that bind the iron of the army to the earth of the land. Without these secret journeys, the winter would be too long, too cold, too hard. He feels a sense of brotherhood with the other empty bunks he saw earlier in the night. He knows he was not the only one walking the snow-covered roads. Others are out there now, hurrying back before the light breaks, their hearts beating fast, their cloaks wrapped tight. He wishes them speed. He wishes them silence. The brazier pops, snap. A spark lands on the metal tray beneath it, ting. The sound rings clearly in the quiet room, a tiny bell of mindfulness. Elias follows the sound into silence. He is drifting now. The boundary between his body and the bed is dissolving. He feels as though he is floating in a warm, gray sea. The sounds of the barracks, the snores, the creaks, the wind, are merging into a single, continuous drone. It is the hum of the universe. His breathing slows. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. The air in the room is getting cooler as the brazier dies, but under the blanket the heat is constant. It is a personal microclimate generated by his own life force. He curls his legs up slightly, assuming the fetal position, conserving every calorie. He thinks of the snow falling on the roof above him, layer upon layer of white silence, muffling the world. He imagines the fort as a stone ship frozen in a white ocean. He imagines the village as a cluster of warm islands in the distance. He is safe, he is back. The hour of the trumpet is approaching. Soon the harsh brass notes will shatter the peace. The door will be thrown open. The sergeant will bark orders. The day will begin with its cold water and hard discipline. The armor will be strapped on. The pilum will be hefted. The patrol will march. But not yet. Not for another hour. This hour is his. It is a stolen hour, reclaimed from the empire. It is a pocket of time where he is neither soldier nor husband, but simply a breathing being in a warm space. He sinks deeper. The images in his mind become abstract. The blue wool becomes a blue sky. The fire becomes a sun. The snow becomes a cloud. He feels a twitch in his hand. His fingers curl, grasping at the straw through the sheet. A reflex. Then they relax, going limp. His jaw slackens. The tension in his forehead smooths out. The lines of worry, carved by the wind and the watch, disappear. He looks younger in the dark. He looks like the boy who left the farm 10 years ago. He listens to the silence behind the noise, the deep, abiding silence of the winter. He is bored, beautifully, wonderfully, perfectly bored. There is nothing to do. There is nothing to see. There is nothing to fix. The boredom is a blanket. It wraps around his mind, smothering the anxieties of the day. It tells him that everything is fine, that the walls are high, that the gates are barred, that the fire was warm. He lets go. The final thread of consciousness snaps. He falls. He falls past the memory of the snow. He falls past the memory of the fire. He falls past the barracks and the fort and the empire. He lands softly in the dark. The breathing of the room continues. Rise and fall, an ocean of 80 souls. Elias joins the rhythm. His breath merges with the collective. He is part of the great, sleeping beast of the legion. Outside, the first faint line of gray light touches the eastern horizon. The snow glimmers, cold and indifferent. The wind sighs over the battlements. But inside, in the third bunk from the wall, there is only warmth. There is only the deep, dreamless peace of the soldier who has returned. He sleeps. The end.